Good afternoon, you wonderful, wonderful peoples. You already know what time it is. It's time for more solo leveling. We're going to be reading the light novel and continuing with chapters 81 to 90. We're getting close to that 100 chapter mark, meaning that we're getting close to the halfway mark of this entire series. Let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Well, actually, you know what? Let's go get a little bit of a recap. So, essentially, Jin is being recognized as the next S rank, but also looking for newer ways to gain even more power. So, with all of that being done, he's now joined a mining crew to see what an A rank dungeon is like. So yeah, pretty much. He's joined the mining crew in order to take part in a dungeon that is a bit of a higher rank than what he's normally used to. But yeah, let's begin with Chapter 81. Chapter 81. Knock, knock. Here are the requested files, sir. Come in. Wu Jinchou entered the association's... Oh, wait. Here are the requested files, sir. Come in. Because apparently he's in the office of Gogunhee. Wu Jinchou entered the association president's office. As if he had been waiting a while, Gogunhee welcomed him, as his expression brightened considerably. As soon as opening the file Jinchou Wu handed over, I gotta get used to really just saying the names I've always given them. Wu, President Go. I really gotta get used to that. My apologies, everybody. As if he had been waiting a while, Gogunhee welcomed him as his expression brightened considerably. As soon as opening the file Wu handed over, a familiar youth's face could be seen. It was none other than Song Jinu. The Jin in the identity photo looked immature, and the atmosphere exuded seemed quite different compared to now, but it wasn't enough to make it impossible to recognize him. Reading the youth's prior records, Go gradually became serious. 4 years of hunter activity as an rank E. Not only that, the lowest grade there is. This was no different than him trying to kill himself. Even if the gates under the association's jurisdiction were of lower grades compared to what large guilds or freelancers were in charge of, they should still be breathlessly difficult for a rank E. And as expected, Jin had spent as much time in the hospital as he was active as a hunter. Even with all these frequent injuries, he still managed to tough it out. Apparently, he couldn't quit the association because of his mother's hospital fees. A rare type of youth in this age indeed. An unreadable light flickered in Go's eyes. In place of his missing father, he has been looking after his sick mother and a younger sister who is still a student, all by himself. After learning that Jin was reawakened, Go decided to take a peek at the youth's files half out of interest, but he sure didn't expect this. Go found the youth even more likable after reading more about the kid. It'll be just too much of a waste to hand him over to large guilds. The longer he took a look at the information, the greater Go's regret grew for failing to recruit the youth to the association's folds. He smacked his lips a little and flipped the page, and eventually arrived at the last one. Feeling satisfied now, Go closed the file folder. Thank you. This was informative. Thank you, sir. Wu took the files being handed back to him and turned around to leave, only to stop and open his mouth, apparently in some difficulty. Excuse me, President, sir. Go raised his head. The look of hesitation could clearly be seen on Wu's face.
Why would Chief Wu make that kind of face when normally he looks hard enough to chew on rocks for breakfast?
Was there a difficult matter to discuss? Go's curiosity had been stoked for good now.
What's the matter?
Wu hesitated for a while before he finally replied. There is something you should know, sir. The truth is, I received word not too long ago that Hunter Song has entered a raid team earlier today.
Already? Okay, so whose team are we talking about here?
It's the raid team from the Hunters Guild.
Hunters, is it?
Jin had chosen the Hunters. Not only that, in one day, too. Go's expression hardened.
Could he have been just all talk, and he got tempted by the massive contract signing fee of the Hunters?
If so, what a disappointing turn of events this was. Well, he was feeling genuinely moved for the first time in a long while after meeting a hunter worthy of that job title. However, when thinking back to the attitude the youth carried from yesterday's meeting, as well as the information Go had read just now, Jin definitely did not look like someone who'd change his mind with the flip of his hand. There must be some other reason. Such as...
For sure. If he wished to combat truly powerful monsters, then the Hunters Guild should suit him the best.
Go was ready to accept this explanation. Too bad, because Wu quickly tackled him off that thought process. It doesn't sound like that's the case, sir.
Have you heard of something?
It has been confirmed that he, Hunter Song, didn't join with the main raid team, but actually with the mining team instead, sir. Go shot up from his chair.
What did you say? A rank as hunter applied to be a miner?
His voice accurately conveyed his disbelief. In all honesty, Wu reacted the same back then. That was why he confirmed it several times to make sure, but the result didn't change no matter what. That's why I hesitated about telling him about this matter. Just what was Jin thinking? Cold sweat trickled down Wu's face as he spoke. Yes, sir. He has indeed done so. Go plopped down on the chair and began chuckling in helplessness.
What a hard to understand young man he is.
After putting on the distributed hard hat and the miner's overall, Jin followed after the foreman Bei Yun Sok. He found a fairly large group of hunters wearing hard hats like him near the gate itself. Around 20 or so. Their gazes focused on Foreman Bei, and the mustached man introduced Jin to everyone. This here's Mr. Song, and he'll be working with us from today onwards. Hello. Jin lightly bowed his head and tried to read the overall atmosphere of the mining team. Their reactions were indifferent, but that was understandable. Of course. On one hand, he was a temp who may or may not show up tomorrow, and on the other side, they were hunters who had signed formal contracts with the guild to become full-time members of the mining team. From their perspective, there was no reason to get particularly friendly with Jin.
Gee whiz, these guys. He's a colleague who's gonna work together with you, you know.
Foreman Bay smiled awkwardly and pointed at a guy with pretty scary facial features standing far back. Mr. Song, please stick with Mr. Mock over there, and if you're curious about something, learn from him. Mr. Mock might be a silent type, but he's the most experienced out of everyone here. Understood. Jin didn't say anything else and stood next to this Mr. Mock. When their gazes briefly met, Mr. Mock spoke in a voice small enough to miss it. It's Mock Jinsu. I'm Sung Jinil. The introduction ended with that. Before long, Mock Jinsu's gaze had shifted to the foreman. What a friendly guy. Jin also shifted his gaze. The foreman was conversing with a regular person who must have been the guild employee in a location a bit of a distance away, looking rather serious. When Jin concentrated a little harder, he could hear the contents of that conversation. The raid team hasn't come out yet. Didn't you say they were finished already? How many minutes ago was that? They said that they are almost finished for real this time. Please be patient for a little while longer until all the monsters inside are taken care of. This is all for the safety of you and your team, you know.
I've heard the exact same thing 3 times already.
Mr. Foreman, you know as much as I do how complicated it'll become when we don't do a thorough job, and a hidden monster pops out during the mining operation. When the male employee who was young enough to be his son smiled and went on a charm offensive, Foreman Bay could no longer stay angry anymore. The mustached man turned around with a smirk on his lips.
Okay, I got it.
Oh, Mr. Foreman, you're not angry anymore?
I said I got it, so get going already.
Yes, sir. As soon as the raid team exits from the gate, I'll definitely run over to you right away without a moment's hesitation. Oh, by the way, you still remember that we're all having a drink after today's operation, yes?
Hey, go! I know, so get going, young man.
Fortunately, the conversation came to an end without any potential problems developing. That employee's responses were quite excellent indeed.
Most folks would think that once you start working for a large guild, you become more arrogant than before, no matter where you are, but
the truth was, most of the guild's administrative staff were regular people, while those operating out in the field were mostly hunters, those who had awakened. There were many things requiring the touch of an awakened, but there would also be a finite number of them. In other words, it was impossible to hire and fire awakened at will as if they were parts of a factory machine that could easily be replaced. That was why all guild employees did their best to mind the hunters and their moods. From others' perspective, they might seem like they had it made in life, but the employees of large guilds all had to go through trials and tribulations that only they knew. It was then. Jin was focusing on the conversation between the foreman and the employee, but out of the blue, he could also hear the whisperings coming from his side.
Did you hear that? The newbie joining us today is supposed to be a rank E.
Are they
talking about me again?
Sometimes Jin couldn't help but resent his excellent sense of hearing.
Still doesn't mean I'm gonna cover up my ears or anything.
While he bitterly smiled to himself, other hunters were cautiously whispering to each other.
What? A rank E?
Rank E has been selected? That's right. Jin could sense the sharp gazes, the sharp glares boring down on the back of his neck. Well, head. Boring down on the back of his head.
What the heck? What the heck? What is the foreman thinking of, hiring a rank E and all?
Does a rank E even have enough strength, I wonder?
Yeah, I wonder about that too.
Can we even finish today's operation on time?
Worried voices could be heard coming from here and there. Still, they kept their voices low, perhaps in consideration of the new guy. Too bad such actions were meaningless in front of Jin, though. Jin could only keep his chuckles down.
There was another reason for their reactions not being so welcoming, huh?
As expected, a Rangi would receive cold shoulders no matter where they went. He was already well used to this, so it didn't faze him anymore.
Well, it's not like I'll be seeing them for long anyway.
But then, something else happened.
Noisy.
Suddenly, the front of the gate became rather noisy.
The raid team has come out. Looks like they're finally finished.
The tired expressions of the hunters in the mining team, restless from all that waiting, brightened one by one. Foreman Bay had been observing the situation until then, and he gestured at his team.
Okay, everyone, let's get going.
Hunters in the mining team checked their equipment and slowly shuffled towards their destination. Jin blended in and went along with them.
Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you. You all worked hard. The Hunters Guild employees stood in front of the gate and welcomed the raid team members as they made their exit one by one. The term raid team, as used in the field, seemed to refer to the members belonging to the guild's main assault force.
So these people are...
the country's best assault force. Studying the faces of each and every upper rank, no, the very highest rank, hunters walked by. Jin's eyes sharpened considerably. He spotted a familiar face among them. Choi Jong-in, the leader of the Hunters Guild, and a rank S mage-type hunter. Jin pulled the hard hat lower to hide his face, figuring that things might get complicated if Choi Jong-in recognized him here. Thankfully, there were many hunters wearing a similar getup as him nearby, so Jin was able to blend in just fine. And so, as he stood amidst the hunters and silently studied the members of the country's very best assault force, Jin began thinking that, are they really the true elites of the Hunters Guild? He was feeling quite incredulous inwardly. Quite contrary to his initial expectations, it was hard to find a single hunter with a really powerful aura. As befitting of the nickname Ultimate Weapon, Jin could sense an enormous amount of magical energy from Choi, but besides that guy, not one was worthy of mention. Could they be the weak ones instead? But that simply made no sense. Yo, Ramil, saliva count? None so far. It's good to see you, Ramil. We are still on chapter 81, but I feel like we're going to be creeping up to chapter 82 soon. Could they be the weak ones instead? But that simply made no sense. Jin softly shook his head. These were the members of the number 1 raid team selected from the cream of the crop found in the country's top guild. I mean, the guild master himself has participated in the raid, so there's just no way that some nobodies would be chosen as team members. The word most ill-suited to describe these people would be weak. Then there could only be one conclusion. No, it's me who's gotten stronger. A thin smile crept up on Jin's lips. Strength was relative, wasn't it? The efforts of the last couple of months definitely did not betray his expectations. His stats had increased by so much that he could think of the raid team that managed to conquer a rank 8 dungeon as weaklings. By using the difference between himself and them, he could sense his own strength. His heart began beating faster from this realization. But then, no one told him to do so, and there was no sound attracting him, yet Jin's head instinctively swiveled back towards the gate. And then he gasped out in surprise. How can this be? There was a woman with a short hairstyle relaxedly walking out from the gate. The very first things that caught his attention on her makeup-less face was a pair of large and clear eyes. Her clean and pale skin, as well as her smoothly flowing neckline, all managed to attract his gaze. If there were 100 men, 99 of them would be unhesitantly praising her looks and call it beautiful. However, besides all that, what attracted Jin's attention the most was not her looks, but what was inside her. The power that was hidden inside her. From this expressionless woman, an incredible amount of magical energy was leaking out in non-stop. At a bare minimum, she's on the same level as Choi. Or maybe even more than that. She possessed an aura that easily overwhelmed her surroundings. By the time his shock wore off and cold reasoning succeeded in driving his emotions out of his head, Jin recalled this woman's name. She must be the only female rank S, Cha Haein, the top-ranked hunter who formed, along with Choi Jong-in, one of the core pillars of the Hunters Guild. I can't think of anyone else. Just how many women possessing such an aura existed in South Korea? Compared to her rarity, though, Cha's face wasn't all that well known. It was because she didn't enjoy being exposed to the cameras. And that was also why Jin saw Cha's face for the first time today as well. Wait, her face doesn't even look weird like in some rumors. So how come she hates being in front of a camera? Indeed, pretty much all ladies in their early 20s love taking photos. Sure, all those happened to be selfies, but still. Perhaps his stare was too direct. Cha's own gaze began shifting in Jin's direction. Stealth shouldn't be necessary here, right? Jin easily hid his presence. Cha continued to scan the area Jin used to stand before tilting her head slightly.
What was that? I thought I felt a really strong presence just now.
Was she mistaken? Initially, she thought that the association president Gogun He had stopped by at the operations area. However, that powerful presence disappeared completely as if it was a lie.
Well, someone as busy as the association president wouldn't come unannounced, now would he?
Too bad for her, the cost of her misunderstanding was rather great. Because she was searching after the hint of that strong presence, she had to focus her senses, and that meant the heavy odor several times worse than normal assaulted her nose. As usual, Cha pulled out a handkerchief. I dragged that one out a little bit, I'm sorry. Cha pulled out a handkerchief to cover her nose, and while tottering around somewhat uneasily, escaped from the cordon of hunters. Her perception is better than I thought. Jin let out a sigh of relief while watching Cha Hae-in's distancing back. With her exit, all the raid team members had come out of the gate. Having been waiting with bated breath for this moment, the foreman of the mining team, Bae Yoon-suk, turned around to face his boys. He clapped his hands loudly and spoke up with a bright voice. "Well, it's our time now, so let's all do our best." The unique nature of the job meant that the retrieval team would have to enter first, followed by the mining team. Jin stood in front of the gate. As he stood there while silently admiring the splendor of the Ranke Gate, something he hadn't experienced before, Bae approached him. "Mr. Song, what are you doing? We should go inside." "All right." Jin replied briefly and stepped through the gate, just like other hunters did before him. And then a familiar message popped up before his eyes.
You have entered a dungeon.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Chapter 81. Onwards to Chapter 82! There's a breeze inside this dungeon? Jin raised his head. As soon as stepping inside, he sensed an ominous wind blowing in from the deepest part of the cave-like dungeon. Suddenly, he felt a chill run down his back, and at the same time, Jin realized the identity of this mysterious wind. It's no normal wind, is it? No, this was a ripple caused by the magic energy. The powerful magic energy emitted by the boss of this Rank A dungeon was physically touching Jin's body. Considering that the Rank S dungeons were incredibly hard to find, even in the entire world, the owner of this magic energy could very well be the highest leveled monster Jin could realistically meet. The boss of a Rank A dungeon. He was tempted to confirm the creature with his own two eyes now. And if there was a chance... Even though Jin was shuddering from the bone-chilling aura that managed to make his hair stand on end, he couldn't stop smiling at the same time. Was this the instinct of a hunter? Wasn't the act of pointing a gun at a powerful predator the most instinctive act there could be for a real hunter? It was then. Tap. A guy coming inside the dungeon bumped into Jin's shoulder. "Hey, come on, man, walk faster." A man named Lee Song-yu frowned deeply, the words flying out of his mouth sounding sullen. The interior of the Rank A dungeon was huge. There was plenty of space to go around the person in front. However, Lee found this newbie who stood there unmoving not to his liking at all. So he figured he'd embarrass the kid or something by bumping into his back. But, what the heck is up with this guy? He's like a darn concrete pillar. When he ran into the newbie's back, it was him who got bounced away instead. So obviously, his irritation had shot up to the heavens. Why is a Rank E this tough? Still, this kid was a measly E, and he was a Rank C. although his skills lagged behind compared to other rank C hunters, and therefore he had to work as a miner. But regardless of that, it wouldn't do for him to lose out to a rank E like this. However, the newbie didn't even show a single hint of a response. Lee's eyes narrowed to a slit.
Oh, would you look at this fool?
Now that his ire had reached a boiling point, Lee angrily glared at the newbie and raised his voice higher.
Look here, man. Aren't you supposed to apologize if you run into someone?
Jin finally turned around then. Lee flinched and took a step back. It was as if a dangerous light was emanating from Jin's eyes just then. While being pressured by an aura that robbed away his breaths, Lee began panicking greatly. It was here that Jin finally opened his mouth. Sorry.
No, I...
Lee stuttered before managing to squeeze his voice out.
Mistakes happen.
His voice sounding unexpectedly meek now, Lee lowered his reddened face and hurriedly walked past Jin. Only after distancing himself far away from the newbie did Lee find some leeway to pat his pounding chest.
What the heck was up with those eyes, man? And why was he smiling so creepily like that?
Their gazes met for only a brief second, yet Lee's entire body froze up and he couldn't even speak properly. Him managing to not avert his eyes right away was his desperate attempt to hold on to its pride.
Is he really in a rank E?
When he bumped into him, and that murderous glare, just what the heck was going on here?
Who cares anymore?
Lee shook his head hard in order to get rid of the distracting thoughts and hurried his steps.
Darn it.
Yo, Mihai, good to see you. We're on chapter 82 right now, but there have been no saliva counts thus far. We have gotten through an entire chapter without it. But yeah, sit back and relax. Good to have you here once again. Jin scratched the side of his head as he looked on at Lee quickly rushing past him. Sorry, I read that sentence wrong. My apologies. Jin scratched the side of his head as he looked on at Lee quickly rushing past him. There we go. Because my nerves were in a heightened state due to the boss, he ended up frightening that guy instead. This was only because he lacked enough practice. Yep, more practice was needed. Jin inwardly reflected on how overly sensitive his response was and chased after the rest of the mining team. He caught up with them pretty quickly. Jin stuck to the rear of the advanced miners and matched their walking pace. Well, none of these guys would be able to catch up with me if I walk in my usual speed, so he had to match theirs. However, the deeper they went in, the greater the ripples of the magic energy from the boss became. My perception stat has risen up by a lot, hasn't it? To be able to clearly sense the boss monster hidden in the deepest chamber of the dungeon like this. Because of that, he was getting excited for no particular reason. Would I even be able to concentrate on my job at this rate? As if to try answering his rhetorical question, he could hear the loud, manly roars coming from his front.
Orya! Orya!
The retrieval team that had entered one step earlier than the mining team was already in the middle of their operation. And that would be to drag a corpse of a huge monster outside using the ropes tightly tied around it.
1, 2, 1, 2, Ucha!
The physical strength of the close-quarter combat-type hunters was excellent to begin with, so they didn't require help from specialized tools to smoothly carry out their work. Jin imprinted every step of a high-ranked dungeon's conquest into his brain. First of all, the raid team enters before everyone else and eliminates all of the monsters found inside, with the exception of the boss. Afterwards, I felt like I read that sentence wrong. First of all, the raid team enters before everyone else and eliminates all the monsters found inside, with the exception of the boss. Yeah, I feel more comfortable saying it that way. Sorry. Afterwards, the retrieval team entered to drag out the monster remains, and finally, the mining team entered to extract various minerals embedded in the dungeon's walls. In order to maximize profit, none of these steps could be omitted. Both the mana stones and magic crystals were a given, but the high-ranked monster's body could be utilized in various ways as well, and thus was worth a lot of money. Bones, hides, flesh, etc. Not one part of a high-ranked monster is useless. And that was one of the differences between monsters found in low-ranked dungeons and those from the high-ranked ones. After sweeping away every single thing worth money from a dungeon, they kill the boss and close the gate. Only after going through all 4 stages of this process could one declare that the high-ranked dungeon was perfectly conquered. At least, that would be from the guild's perspective. However, wouldn't my soldiers be enough to carry out these similar labors? While walking past the sweating hunters of the retrieval team, Jin suddenly came up with that idea. For sure, after all their level-ups, the Shadow Soldiers were much stronger than the members of the retrieval team, who were all hunters ranked below rank C to begin with. Dividing his troops into 3, and by making one group hunt, another one retrieve, while the remaining group took care of mining, then I might really be able to perfectly conquer a high-ranked dungeon all by myself. A satisfied smile formed on Jin's face. The reason for him being here was to explore, and now he was beginning to think it was a good idea to come here after all.
Mr. Song, did something good happen?
The foreman asked him from the side. Seeing that the rankee with no experience of being inside a high-ranked dungeon broke out in a grin like that, he couldn't help but get curious. Well, I was just surprised by the sizes of the monsters that are bigger than I thought. That's all. Perhaps finding Jin's vague answer satisfying, the foreman replied jovially while trying to dig through his memory.
Oh, is that so? Well, even I couldn't keep my mouth shut the first time I entered one, too.
Now that they were talking like this, Jin decided to ask a couple more questions. I heard that all the regular monsters had been killed off, but the boss is still alive, isn't it?
That's right. Well, if the boss dies, the gate will close down after all.
His answer implied that, until the retrieval and mining operations were completed, the boss could not be hunted down. What if the boss comes out of the boss room?
Well, such a case is almost non-existent, but in that case, everyone remaining inside would be dead meat.
Now that was an obvious result. The raid team exiting from the dungeon would take an extended break until the boss raid. And quite obviously, the hunters in the mining team or the extraction team didn't possess enough power to fight against the boss of a rank A dungeon. However, the commonly accepted belief was that before the dungeon break occurs, the boss would almost always remain inside the boss room. Perhaps that was why there was no trace of fear on the foreman's expression. But such a horrifying monster is not too far from us. You aren't even remotely scared?
Not at all. The foreman base sounded confident. In the last 3 years I worked for the Hunters Guild, not once was there an incident similar to that. So you can rest easy, Mr. Song.
Jin stared at the grinning foreman, lightly tapping him on the shoulder, and couldn't help but find it rather envious. Ignorance is a blessing, isn't it? The ripples of magic energy coming from the boss were powerful enough to shake his body even when standing still. It looked like only Jin could pick up on the boss's aura in this place.
Oh, so it starts from here.
The foreman Bay discovered mana stones on the cave walls and smiled brightly. The experienced miners began occupying their natural spots in front of the stones, even though no one directed them to do so. They put down their gear and hefted the pickaxes up. Jin, too, stood towards the end of the cavern wall filled with mana stones. So, am I supposed to just strike down? He grew worried that, were he to use his real strength and strike down, both the mana stones and the pickaxe might shatter into tiny little pieces.
Jin stood there hesitating, unable to start his job, but he was able to take in the side of Mok Jin-soo, the supposed veteran of the mining team, as referred to by the foreman Bei. Swish! Crack! Swish! Crack! Mok Jin-soo rhythmically mined the stones. Whenever he struck the walls, mana stones noisily tumbled down to the ground. Wow. Now that was some skill worthy of the veteran label. He was mining the stones twice as quickly as compared to the speed of his colleagues. Jin's eyes gleamed brightly. As the time slowed down in his perception, Jin observed and learned Mok Jin-soo's postures and breathing patterns, as well as the movements of muscles. In Soo, Mok Jin-soo's economical but effective movements were being replayed countless times in Jin's head. I think I get it now. Indeed, he thought he understood it, more or less. Jin lifted his pickaxe up. It was as if he was the mirror image of Mok Jin-soo. Swish! Crack! Swish! Crack! Even if their movements were similar, Jin's strength was on a completely different level from Mok Jin-soo's. Whenever Jin struck the cave wall, larger, more intact mana stones tumbled down in drove. Swish! Crack! Swish! Crack! A rather refreshing noise came from the end of the wall. The hunters of the mining team realized one by one that something didn't feel right. Oi, what's up? Look over there.
What the heck is up with him?
The hunters stopped what they were doing and dazedly stared at Jin. Even Mok's tireless hands came to a stop too. Everyone was rendered speechless. The supposedly mining virgin rank E hunter was currently making easy mincemeat out of the mana stone wall with practice movements. What are you doing, guys? You came here to do a job, so why are you all standing around like that? The foreman Bei had been jotting down the scale of the mana stone deposit on the ledger until then. But when he discovered that every member of the mining team had downed tools for some reason, he got shocked out of his mind and quickly ran to where they were. Foreman, will you take a look over there? What now? The foreman Bei craned his neck to look, and then his eyes grew super large. Huh? Even the foreman displayed the same reaction as everyone else. He couldn't rip his eyes away from Jin and his speed, which was around 3 times faster than other miners. Foreman, didn't you say that it's the newbie's first time today? That I did. Lee, who had been wondering about Jin's identity earlier, butted in suddenly. Is he really a Reiki? I confirmed it with his license, obviously. You think I'll let a complete stranger into this team without confirming his hunter license first? Well then, how you explain that? Wordlessly observing Jin, the foreman nervously swallowed his saliva as excitement dyed his expression. There's our first one. Our first saliva count. Without a doubt, Mr. Song is the heaven-sent miner. Indeed, there was a reason why those rugged, tough-looking chest muscles caught the foreman's attention back when they were having a short job interview. Yup, I'm really good. I really am good at finding the right people. A thick smile spread on the foreman Bei's face. An alarm went off from Foreman Bei's wristwatch. He raised his wrist to confirm the time. It goes already. It was lunch hour already. Everyone, let's take a break and have lunch. Yes! Everyone dropped their tools and dusted their hands. While the miners were walking towards the exit in pairs and groups, Jin showed no hint of moving from the spot. Foreman Bei got closer and asked him, Mr. Song, aren't you going too? I'm not feeling all that hungry at the moment. Even then, you should eat something if you plan to continue working in the afternoon. Nah, I'm fine. I did eat my breakfast a bit later than usual anyway. Really? Well, nothing I can do about that then. Bei was planning to talk about the future together with this young man during the lunch break, but that didn't mean he should forcibly drag the kid away, no. Foreman Bei ruefully turned around towards the gate's exit. It was at this point that the corners of Jin's lips arched up. Watching the distancing back of the miners, he formed a deep smile.
I can't miss such a wonderful opportunity, right?
Finally, he was left all alone. Both the mining team and the retrieval team had left the dungeon. For about 1 hour, he was free to do whatever he wanted, meaning this was the best chance for him to seek out the boss hiding in the deepest part of the dungeon. Jin put the pickaxe down and slowly shifted his gaze to the direction of the boss room. He could still sense the thick aura of the monster.
I'll just go and take a quick look.
He wasn't thinking of doing anything at all. No, he just wanted to see what the boss looked like. Just from imagining him seeing the boss, his heart was pounding faster. Jin forcibly controlled his wildly beating heart and walked forward. He moved deeper into the cave, following after the aura of the boss. And so, just how long did he have to walk? A long stroll later, he finally arrived at the entrance of a huge chamber. It was the boss room. The cavern itself was already pretty huge, but the boss room was even larger. Was every high-ranking dungeon as huge as this one? Just as he began wondering like that, he discovered the boss and automatically accepted that this dungeon simply had to be this big.
If a monster like that gets outside...
His eyes spotted the lone humanoid monster standing still at the far end of the boss room. Jin's eyes began gleaming brightly like a young kid who got his hands on a toy he wanted so much as a gift.
A giant-type monster.
He heard a few things about this type of monster before, but this would be his first time looking at one. Because a giant-type monster's corpse was so huge, it was practically impossible to retrieve it in time, so most people would hardly ever get to see one outside of dungeon breaks. Such a creature was right over there, and that was causing his heart to palpitate faster and faster.
That thing's really strong.
The hair on his body was standing up, but for some reason he didn't think for once that hunting that thing down was impossible for him.
The current me can.
He'd be more than enough. The moment he thought like this, he reflexively swallowed his saliva. That's two! That's two now. Just how much experience points would he earn by hunting that guy down? By working his butt off inside the demon's castle, he leveled up 15 times in a week. But if he could kill one boss and raise his level by 2-3 times...
No, I shouldn't be doing this.
Even though he was telling himself he shouldn't, both the Badoka's dagger and the Night Killer were summoned into his hands already. More importantly, his expression wasn't of someone stuck in a dilemma, wondering whether he should do something or not.
Should I just go ahead and do this thing?
A soft but excited grin formed on his lips. However, while Jin stood there deliberating with a smile on his face, a certain woman's incredibly sharp voice flew at him from his behind.
What do you think you're doing?
And that is the end of Chapter 82. Onwards to Chapter 83. Right then, Jin felt his heart crash down to the pit of his stomach.
When did she?
He was paying too much attention to the boss and failed to notice that someone had become closer.
I'm busted.
Jin could only smack his lips in regret. However, with an eyewitness around, it was no longer possible to stare avariciously at the boss. The Hunters Guild had purchased the raid permit for his particular dungeon, so naturally the boss of this place was also a part of their investment. And if the boss was killed off, the gate would close down. The potential losses the Hunters Guild might incur would be a lot then.
I nearly messed up.
He got blinded by the desire to level up and nearly put his hands on someone else's property. Jin regained his bearings and spat out a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, the owner of the voice had walked closer.
I asked you what you were doing.
Jin formed an embarrassed smile and turned around to face her.
I got lost and ended up here.
You got lost?
She sounded flabbergasted. Only then did Jin confirm who the owner of the voice was.
Huh? Isn't she?
He saw that face just before entering the dungeon, didn't he? It was none other than the rank S hunter Cha Hae-in. As Cha Hae-in slowly closed the distance, she carefully scanned both of Jin's hands.
I definitely saw him holding weapons just now, though.
Was she mistaken? Whatever the case might have been, they had disappeared without a trace. Spoke too soon? Count two? Yeah. Whatever the case might have been, they had disappeared without a trace. Cha's gaze scanned the entirety of Jin up and down.
A hard hat and a worker's overall. Is he from our mining team?
She honestly believed him about getting lost here. She didn't know how he got this far, but well, the boss room was a very dangerous place to hang around. Discovering the reason was secondary. For now, Cha figured that the priority should be on helping this man leave this place.
That chamber is where the boss is.
Cha covered her nose with her handkerchief as usual and stood before Jin.
Please exit from the dungeon as soon as possible. If you manage to attract its aggro, people inside this dungeon could all die.
Ah, I'm sorry. It seemed that his acting worked. Jin formed a satisfied expression and walked past Cha. It was then. Cha's head snapped towards Jin. Something impossible just happened. Cha's eyes opened wide. And even before she realized it, she was calling out to him.
Excuse me, wait!
Yes?
Can you take a look at me for a sec?
What's gotten into her? And they said that thieves knew what they did wrong. Jin was not looking forward to Cha coming in close to him. Too bad she was already standing right in front of his nose. What's the matter? Seems that you was 2 minutes behind without realizing. Yeah, I felt like you were 2 minutes behind, because normally when I call out swallowed saliva counts, you are right there, right when I say it. So I had a feeling that you were kind of behind, but I was just waiting for you to catch up. You're good, Mihai. You're always good. He asked with a troubled a look on his face, but she didn't answer and simply proceeded to lightly breathe in the air near him. She had already put away the handkerchief covering her nose. What's going on here? Jin failed to understand why she was doing this. Wait, why is she suddenly smelling me? Jin began panicking inwardly. However, the state of confusion Cha was going through at the moment was several times greater than his.
There's no stink coming from him.
This would be her first time meeting another hunter that didn't stink. Cha's surprised eyes stared at Jin, and a question mark floated above Jin's head as his reply. Is there some kind of a problem?
You? Are you a hunter for real?
Was there a need for words here? Jin pushed forward the hunter license hanging on his neck. Cha took the license and her gaze quickly alternated between Jin's face and the ID photo.
Rank E. Sung Jinu.
Was this because his rank was too low? She could not pick up any type of smell coming from this man named from this named Jin. She could not pick up any type of smell coming from this man named Jin. No, wait. Actually, a pleasant odor was gently wafting out of him instead. Jin sneakily extracted his license out of Cha's hand. Can I go now?
Well,
Cha did call out to Jin, but then realized that she had nothing else to say, nor had a reason to keep him here.
It's nothing. Please be careful on your way out. This dungeon is rather large, you see.
Ah, of course. Jin lightly nodded his head and turned towards the location of the mining operation. His back soon disappeared around the corner of the cavern. However, Cha's lingering gaze didn't shift away from the path Jin had walked down on.
He smells really nice.
Hunters of the mining team were returning to the mining operations area one by one after finishing their lunch. Speaking of lunch, since I had a hefty breakfast, I don't need to worry about eating lunch for a minute, so the break I take at the halfway mark will not be as long as it tends to be when I do take lunch breaks. Foreman Bay was walking with a toothpick stuck in between his teeth. Once he saw Jin appearing from the deeper parts of the dungeon, though, he flinched greatly in shock.
Huh? Mr. Song, why are you coming from there?
Oh, that. Jin sneakily shifted his gaze over in the direction of the boss.
I can't tell him about me stopping by the boss to see what it looks like out of curiosity, right?
Jin's gaze returned to Foreman Bay.
I got lost while searching for the bathroom, actually.
Hey, go, you need to be more careful, young man. Interiors of these dungeons all look the same, so if you get lost inside, it won't be easy finding your way around. But still, how did you find your way back to here?
Oh, I ran into Cha Hae-in Hunter Neem on my way back, so...
Ah, Cha Hunter Neem, was it? She's probably gone to stand guard by the boss room just in case the boss decides to take a stroll. That lady also worries a lot. Maybe as much as you.
Mr. Sung?
Foreman Bay guffawed vigorously. It seemed that Jin being worried about the boss not too long ago had left a deep impression in his mind. Jin could only smile wryly.
The foreman can laugh like this only because he has no idea how terrifying the boss actually is.
This was the difference between the hunters doing these sorts of jobs and the hunters working in the assault team. Cha understood very well how dangerous and scary in existence the monsters could be, so she was just being meticulous in those areas that no one else was paying much attention to.
I didn't know there was such a side to her, what with that expressionless face of hers and all.
If the boss decided to come out of the boss room, the assault team wouldn't be the ones in danger. No, it would be the workers doing their job, as the raid team would be taking a break outside the dungeon. And she was sacrificing the allure of sweet rest to stand guard in front of the boss room, just for the sake of total strangers.
She's an amazing woman.
That was Jin's honest impression of Cha Hae-in. It was at this point that he suddenly recalled her odd habit.
Why was she covering her nose with a handkerchief?
Thinking back, she never let go of the handkerchief, not even once, except for their meeting a few moments ago.
Foreman?
Yeah? Foreman Bay remained very friendly whenever Jin asked him a question, even though it would be quite reasonable for him to get a bit annoyed by now.
Right. The responses were pretty good back when I was doing my job, wasn't it?
Indeed, one should strive to do their best in their jobs. Thanks to his efforts, Jin could ask about this and that without holding back now. Heck, it was Foreman Bay who urged Jin to speak instead. Mr. Song, you called for me, so how come you ain't saying a thing?
Oh, well, it's nothing important, but by any chance, do you know why Cha Hae-in Hunter Neem walks around with a handkerchief?
Oh, that? Well, it's 'cause Hunter Cha's a bit particular, you see.
Bit particular?
What did he mean by that? Jin didn't have to ask because Foreman Bay helpfully explained himself first. Hunter Cha can supposedly smell a kind of body odor coming from other hunters, and I hear she finds them pretty horrible.
She can smell other hunters?
I heard something or other about her special constitutions and stuff. Her special constitutions, he said. Jin also possessed something similar to that, his excellent sense of hearing. Even from his early years, his hearing could be considered better than average, but once he awakened, it developed even further.
Probably Cha Hae-in's sense of smell also got enhanced like mine.
So he could more or less understand where she was coming from.
Well, wouldn't you agree
that she's peculiar? Perhaps he enjoyed the sight of Jin focusing on his words more than he should, because Foreman Bay continued on with his explanations without any prompt from the youth. I heard that she finds it really hard to breathe near other hunters because of the stank.
Was that why? Asking me if I was a hunter? Was it because, unlike other hunters, he didn't smell at all? Back in the Red Gate, the leader of the White Phantoms said something similar. Wasn't this a bit similar in context to what that creature told him? He didn't have the hunter-specific stink, and they couldn't hear the voice telling them to kill him. Because I'm a player. A unique existence who had received the advantages of the system. Just what was this player? The question of his own identity rose up in Jin's head, but he shook his head eventually. This isn't a problem I can figure out now anyway. Jin emptied his mind. Problems that couldn't be solved by thinking too hard would only tire him out if he continued to dwell on it. Crack! Crack! It was then he heard his colleagues getting back to work, so Jin also lifted the pickaxe. The rank A boss. I wish I could hunt it down. What would he have done if Cha Hae-in didn't show up in time? He couldn't help but wonder. Thanks to Jin's brilliant efforts, the mining team was able to finish their operation well before dinner time. According to the foreman, they had finished 2 hours faster than planned. With that, the looks the fellow miners were giving him had gone through substantial changes. Nice work, Mr. Sung. You were really good, you know. After seeing all those Monica stones tumbling down, I thought we somehow got ourselves an excavator or something. Hunters surrounding Jin began praising him one by one. The cold, indifferent eyes before entering the gate were nowhere to be seen now. Jin was also feeling rather pleased with himself. This experience of being a dungeon miner proved to be surprisingly educational, and he also got to achieve the purpose of coming to this rank A dungeon as well. Well, let's get out of here, everyone. Roger that.
Let's go!
At Foreman Bay's order, the miners all began moving at the same time. 1, 2, yucha! They left behind the retrieval team, still suffering through their operation, and after changing out of their overalls, the miners regathered in one spot. Unlike the other miners, who were all full-time employees of the guild, Jin's daily wage was handed to him immediately. Here, this is your share, Mr. Sung. Thank you. While handing over the envelope containing the day's wage, Foreman Bay sneakily threw in a question as well. We're planning to go and enjoy a drink together, so how about it? Would you like to join us? He sounded light and cheery, but his eyes were gleaming in a serious light. Looks like he has something important to say to me, but... Jin could sense the man's desperation even. Unfortunately, Jin declined the invite as tactfully as possible. I'm sorry. Is that so? Foreman Bay scratched his chin. Well, this is a story best told after knocking back a few cold ones, but he hurriedly changed his tactic. I've met quite a few people while doing this job for many years now. Okay. But it's my first time meeting someone like you. You have a natural-born talent to become a miner. It seemed that Foreman Bay really liked Jin here. Well, this is... All Jin could do here was to chuckle awkwardly, unable to neither agree or refute that notion. Deciding that the young man's smile was a good omen, Foreman Bay confidently moved on to the main topic at hand. I'd normally not say something like this, but don't you want to come and work for me full-time? I will definitely not treat you poorly, you see. This young man named Sung Jin-woo. Even though today was his first day as a miner, he managed to outperform the veterans by 3-4 times the amount. If he couldn't hold on to such outstanding talent, wouldn't he be a failure of a foreman? He was even thinking of discussing the matter with the person in charge and have Jin's wages paid separately from others. That was how badly he wanted to reel in this young man. Too bad. Jin remained resolute. Thank you for your kind words, but
Actually, I'm getting ready for something else at the moment.
Just a few words from Jin, and Foreman Bay's face was forming a dejected expression of a man who had lost his country.
Really?
Jin chuckled to himself.
What an interesting guy.
To display his raw emotions so openly like this. More likely, Foreman Bay must have thought that he had discovered an unpolished rough within the E rank. Foreman Bay pondered something for a bit before cautiously asking the youth, "What about tomorrow then? Can you come to work tomorrow as well?"
Tomorrow?
Actually, he didn't have anything else planned for tomorrow. The reevaluation was scheduled for the day after, too. Still, was there a reason for him to take another mining job now? He already got to learn the process of the dungeon conquest, and he even got to witness the rank A boss, too. However,
Wait a minute.
just as he was opening his mouth to voice his refusal, a new question quickly entered Jin's mind.
Does that mean Hunter's Guild will go on another raid tomorrow?
That's right, and that one's also a rank A.
But is that even possible? They finished the raid today.
Normally, a raid team would take about a week off after finishing up a raid,
And this raid only started from yesterday afternoon.
which meant the elites of the Hunter Guild were raiding this dungeon for 2 days in a row, yesterday and today. And by the time they kill the boss after the retrieval operations finally end, it'd be the early dawn. Naturally, Jin couldn't understand how there would be another raid tomorrow. When Jin displayed a hint of interest, Foreman Bay also got more enthusiastic. You see, Assault Team B will be stepping forward tomorrow, not Team A.
Assault Team B?
Could it be that they were thinking of clearing a rank A dungeon with a backup team? And this is precisely the power of the Hunters Guild, you see? I mean, we are probably the only guild in the entirety of South Korea who can conquer rank A dungeons with 2 different teams. Foreman Bay sounded quite proud then.
Do hunters raid dungeons like this all the time?
No. Now, normally we wouldn't have to split up the teams like that, but it looks like the schedule got overlapped this time. Because 2 rank A gates appeared around the same time in the district the Hunters Guild operated in, Chairman Choi Jong-in had to sweat a lot in order to get the permits for both of them, apparently.
Ah, so the reason for running into Chairman Choi in the association yesterday was this.
Someone as busy as Choi Jong-in wouldn't just randomly show up in the association for no reason whatsoever. Jin nodded his head.
Okay, so does that mean it'll be your...
Okay, so does that mean it'll be your first time trying to raid the dungeon with the B team? Oh, wait.
Okay, so does this mean it'll be your first time trying to raid the dungeon with the B team?
That's right. However, the B team of the Hunters isn't your regular backup team, okay? They are even better than the A team of some of the other large guilds, I'll have you know.
Still, it should be far more dangerous than today, yes?
Foreman Bay became speechless then, because that would be quite obvious. In today's raid, 2 rank S hunters participated. On the other hand, only the rank A's and below would try to raid the dungeon tomorrow. Sure, he heard that the size of tomorrow's gate was smaller than the one today, but still, losing 2 rank S hunters was a big blow indeed. After all, Mr. Sung was worried about the boss monster, even when the assault team featuring 2 rank S hunters were nearby.
Doesn't mean I can lie to the kid now, is it?
Foreman Bay was thinking of changing the youth's mind tomorrow while working beside him, but realizing that he had failed, he expressed some regret. Yes, it'll get more dangerous for sure. If something goes wrong, then the raid itself might fail too. It was here that the light in Jin's eyes changed. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Chapter 83. Onwards to Chapter 84. Jin didn't ponder for long before speaking up.
I see.
If that's what you think, then there's not much I can do.
Where should I show up tomorrow?
Eh? After hearing this unexpected reply, Foreman Bay's eyes went extra round in shock. Wait, I haven't made a mistake just now with what I said, right? Didn't he definitely say that tomorrow was going to be more dangerous than today? Mr. Song's expression wasn't so good after hearing Bay's story, so the older man was just about ready to forget about the matter completely. However, what was the meaning of this? Thanks to this youth, it looked like Bay wouldn't have to worry about finding another miner for tomorrow. Is that all? Mr. Song could easily do the work of 4 or 5 people all by himself, and that was on his first day, too. The boy's work speed that even managed to impress the ace of the mining team, Mok Jin-soo, was indeed pretty shocking the first time Bay witnessed it. From Jin's declaration that he'd come tomorrow, Foreman Bay felt that he had gained a powerful, trustworthy ally, and he was filled up with lots of confidence. Mr. Song, you made the right choice. Foreman Bay's mustache quivered as he formed a blindingly brilliant smile. And then, to make sure that Jin's mind wouldn't change overnight, he even came up with an unprecedented offer, too. I'll have a good chat with the person in charge and make sure that you get double the normal daily wages tomorrow.
Will that be okay?
Of course. You think I wouldn't be able to do that for you, Mr. Song? Foreman Bay confidently pounded on his chest. Mr. Sung, don't you worry about a thing and just come to work tomorrow. Quite obviously, who would sweat over paying twice as much in daily wages to a guy capable of doing the work of 4 to 5 people? If Bay was a chairman, never mind double, he'd triple, no, maybe even more with an eye towards the future. Didn't expect myself to rue the day that I'm not the chairman of the Hunters. Foreman Bay could only swallow back his laughter. Now, that one doesn't count. Jin asked him a question then.
Right. I promised to meet someone tomorrow evening, so, will I be able to make it in time?
Earlier this morning, Jin-O gave him a call. For some reason, he sounded worn out.
That kid was on the top of the world yesterday, saying that everything had worked out all right, yet today...
Jin was taken by surprise, but unfortunately the call came only after he had already applied to become a miner. He had no choice but to delay the meeting until tomorrow evening. Foreman Bay chuckled out loudly. From what I hear, tomorrow's dungeon should be much smaller in scale than today's one, so we should be finished well before 6 o'clock. Weren't they able to finish today's work around 5 p.m. today? They should be even faster tomorrow, not the other way around. Jin nodded his head. That would be fine for him, too.
In that case, I'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Take care. Watching Jin turn around and walk away, a satisfied grin formed on Foreman Bay's lips. If I did marry, I'd probably have a son around his age by now. Why did that boy's back look so wide and trustworthy? How wonderful would it be if the world was filled with newbies as excellent as Mr. Song? A thick smile refused to leave Foreman Bay's lips. However, he wasn't the only one smiling. While walking towards the bus stop, an imperceptible smile was floating on Jin's lips, too.
Well, it's not like I'm wishing for the raid team to make a blunder tomorrow, but...
But if something were to happen, then his existence would prove to be a huge help either to the raid team or the mining team. It wasn't as if he had a change of heart either. Perhaps ironically, the success rate for clearing rank A gates was actually greater than those of the lower ranks.
For one, the association doesn't hand over the permit to any old guilds,
and once the guild was given the opportunity, they would commit all of their resources and try to conquer the dungeon too. However,
the Hunters Guild isn't committing their everything in tomorrow's dungeon raid.
To think they'd have the cojones to split a single assault team into two and prey on two separate rank A gates at the same time. That was some confidence befitting the holder of the top spot in their profession. But it was undeniable that the accompanying risk was incredibly high, too. Regardless of what happens, I won't lose either way. If they managed to complete the raid safely, that'd be the best for everyone involved. On the other hand, if an accident did occur, he'd assist the Hunters Guild, but in return he would get to monopolize the high-ranked monsters by himself. Very good. A deeper smile formed on Jin's face as he climbed onto the bus. Late at night, Cha Hei-in was tossing and turning in her bed.
Why is he different from others?
Occupied by various thoughts regarding the man she met back in the boss room, she couldn't fall asleep at all. After awakening her abilities roughly 2 years ago, she ran into many hunters, but there had never been an exception. Whenever she approached hunters, or to be more specific, the awakened, a deeply unpleasant stink assaulted her nose. At first, she thought she was sick, so she went to various doctors. However, she made no progress in that regard. One of the doctors she went to see cautiously told her of his hypothesis. I was about to say hypothesis. That's not a word. Hypothesis? Really? Oh, Kitty's gonna love that one. One of the doctors she went to see cautiously told her of his hypothesis. That guess certainly held some merit. The stink would get worse the higher the rank of a hunter was. And sure enough, the lower the rank, the more tolerable the stink was too. Of course, regular people didn't emit any stink whatsoever. However,
This is the first time meeting someone with a pleasant smell.
recalling the events of earlier, her heart began beating a bit faster. She became curious who that man could be, so as soon as the raid ended, she connected to the association's website and searched for his details. Rank E, Sung Jinu. The information on the man, as seen on the hunter license, could be seen on the screen.
There are no contact details.
But then again, what would she even do after finding out about his contact info? Realizing that there was nothing more she could glean from the association's website, she then ended up calling the phone number of Jo Myung-ki, the manager of the recruitment department. She didn't even mean to do that, though. It was already well past 1 a.m. by the time she called him. He wouldn't have answered the phone if it wasn't from South Korea's sole female hunter, who also happened to be the... He wouldn't have answered the phone if it wasn't from South Korea's sole female rank S hunter, who also happened to be the vice chairman of the Hunters Guild. I wanted to make sure that I read that sentence right. Please forgive me. She couldn't help but think that she made a mistake after hearing the still sleepy voice of Jo Myung-ki, but that lasted only for a short while. Cha opened her mouth with some difficulty.
Can you find some information on a hunter named Sung Jinu?
Cha was taken in by a huge surprise. Myung-ki was none other than the man in charge of recruiting in South Korea's best guild. So why did a man like that remember the name of a rank E hunter?
Do you know who it is? Who he is? Chairman did that? Do you know what's going on? So, what did you find out?
A voice that was thick with a helpless sigh came out of the phone speaker.
Ah. No, it's fine. I'm sorry for calling you so late. Good night.
Click. Those were the contents of the phone call she made 3 hours ago. She worked up her courage to find out more about a guy, only for more questions to bubble up in her mind. A mystery hunter whose identity was being sought after. A mystery hunter whose identity was being sought after by the leader of the Hunters Guild, while the association was doing their best to hide it.
There's definitely something going on here.
No, wait. There simply had to be something. She earnestly prayed for it. He could very well be the person to unravel the mysterious and special constitution that continued to torment her ever since she turned 21, 2 years ago when she had awakened her powers.
That man. Can I meet him again?
Could it be that she'd never get to see him again? She was beset with worry all of a sudden. Thankfully, Cha recalled Jin's hard hat. She remembered that the hard hat and the overalls he was wearing both spotted the emblem of the Hunters Guild.
I remember now. He was in the mining team, wasn't he?
Unlike her, who was the part of the raid team of the raid team A, the mining team would be working later today as well. If Jin hadn't left the mining team, then there was a chance that she could meet him again. I don't know why I'm yawning so much. I got a full night's rest. If Jin hadn't left the mining team, then there was a chance she could meet him again.
Let's go and take a look.
Since she was the vice chairman of the guild, it'd not be a strange thing for her to stop by at the raid location.
Right. I'll just show up there as if nothing's wrong and see whether that man came to work or not.
But why? As soon as she thought about the possibility of seeing that suspicious hunter again, she felt much more relaxed.
If I want to do that, I gotta get some sleep first.
For the sake of today's schedule, Cha forced her unwilling eyes to close, even before the morning sun rose up. Jin left for the meeting area first thing in the morning. It was different from yesterday, when he had some leeway as he only joined the crew during the middle of the raid.
Maybe I shouldn't have worried.
He was worried about whether he was too early or not, but, well, many hunters had gathered before the gate already by the time he got there.
Huh?
Hey, Mr. Song! Mr. Song! Foreman Bei Yun Suk greeted him first.
Hey, it's Mr. Song!
Hey, man, Mr. Song! Other hunters began greeting him with a slight nod, and some even raised their hands as high as their chests to greet Jin, which was quite different from yesterday. The work each of the miners did was important, so they'd wholeheartedly welcome a colleague with great skills anytime. From the expressions of the hunters of the mining team, their delight could clearly be seen.
This is a bit awkward.
Jin had been subjected to poor treatment ever since becoming a rank-E hunter, so when he received such a warm welcome, he couldn't help be dazed somewhat. Still, he didn't feel bad about their honest reactions. Jin wordlessly lowered his head as his greeting.
1, 2, 3...
Foreman Bei counted the number of miners presented today and jotted it down on the memo. 18, 19. Well, it's almost everyone. This should be more than enough. Well, it was fine for 1 or 2 to miss out on a day like today, because we have 2 aces in our midst now. Foreman Bei's gaze met those of Mok Jin-soo and Jin. Bei grinned like a fool, causing Mok to hurriedly avert his gaze, while Jin was tilting his head in confusion. It was then.
Excuse me?
Who is this? Who is saying this? Who's saying this?
Excuse me, Foreman Bei?
Ah! You surprised me! Foreman Bei flinched and shuddered grandly from the voice suddenly coming from his side. Moving around without revealing one's presence was clear evidence of one's excellent skills. And as expected, the one Foreman Bei's resentful gaze was directed to was the leader of today's raid team, Son Ki-hoon. Oh, my heart nearly stopped from fright just now, Son Hunter Neem.
My apologies.
It was a bad habit I picked up from working in the dungeons for too long. Son Ki-hoon grinned sheepishly. It was then the foreman of the retrieval team suddenly revealed himself from behind Son Ki-hoon.
An old man not acting his age.
What the? Even you? Why would you two be here when the mining team is?
What do you mean, why? We are here because we've got business with you, obviously.
Foreman Bei stared at Son Ki-hoon with a puzzled expression. Oh, wait. I think I read it right. Meanwhile, Son Ki-hoon was scanning the hunters of the mining team as he opened his mouth.
The thing is, our team's porter decided not to show up today. Looks like I'll have to borrow someone from the mining team.
Eh? Foreman Bay's eyes went round in response. But why from my team? Why from my team? When you got the retrieval team with lots of strong people who can carry luggage better than us?
As if he was waiting for that reply, the foreman of the retrieval team flew off his handle.
My boys had to work overtime for 3 more hours just to finish our operation. They even missed dinner too, but now you want to use them as a porter too?
The reason why the retrieval team had to put in overtime while missing supper, because the mining team had finished their operation far too early.
Well, it's true that we finished our operation, which should have normally ended around 7 in the evening, by around 5 o'clock, all thanks to Mr. Sung.
When the foreman of the retrieval team glared daggers with veins popping up in his neck, Foreman Bay forgot what he wanted to say. Perhaps he thought that this would be enough of an explanation. Ki-hoon then addressed the miners. Is there anyone among you who wish to accompany the raid team? Once the raid is over, we will furnish you the additional hazard pay immediately. Ki-hoon's pleading eyes darted from here to there, but no one stepped forward. Either they looked down on the ground or stared at the heavens, deliberately avoiding meeting his gaze. That would be obvious, really.
I ain't gonna risk my net for a couple more bucks.
Won't do it, even if you beat me up.
The highest ranked hunter among the mining team was only a rank C. Most of them were rank Ds. Heck, they even had a rank E among them, too. However, the place Ki-hoon wanted to take them to was a rank A dungeon, seen as perhaps the most dangerous of the lot, realistically speaking. The miners would still hesitate greatly, even if the dungeon in question was rated B, yet it was an A. Even a gentle graze would kill these hunters in there. No, just stepping on the wrong spot would result in one's death. That dungeon was not a place where low-ranked hunters could survive. Sure, porters only had to lug around the raid team's gear, but still, compared to the job of mining, it was still far too dangerous. Is there no one? Ki-hoon's expression became more and more crestfallen. Who knew how much more time and effort he needed to waste in order to find another porter? Probably the whole morning, or even till the afternoon. Or, if he was really unlucky, then the entire day might go down the drain. This is going to be trouble. It was at this point when his eyes met with a certain young hunter's. Unlike other hunters, this guy was staring right back at him. It was, of course, Jin. While Ki-hoon was staring at him, Jin too was slowly scanning that man's appearance. Isn't he a bit sharp for a tanker? Common sense dictated that the leader of raid teams were tankers most of the time. Compared to other tankers, though, Ki-hoon was a bit on the lankier side. He was also quite tall, so rather than a hunter, he looked more like a basketball player more than anything else. Jin finally stopped looking at Ki-hoon and his eyes drifted away. Only then did Ki-hoon spit out his deeply held breaths. What just happened? Just now, his entire body had frozen up so much that he even forgot to breathe. He couldn't understand why. Am I getting too tense, since this will be my first raid as a leader and all? Up until now, he had participated in raids as an auxiliary tanker. That was why today's opportunity was doubly important to him, and he definitely could not afford to commit a blunder today. Ki-hoon was bent over and panting laboriously in order to recover, before raising himself back up again. Probably because of his rather embarrassing conduct, the surroundings had gotten noisier.
However, he soon realized that the cause of the disturbance was not him. Ki-hoon's gaze shifted back to the mining team's hunters, only to spot a hand raised up to the sky. Finally, someone was applying for the job, someone he had been waiting so desperately for. Ki-hoon's expression brightened considerably. When Jin took a step forward, he became the center of attention. He became the center of the attention. I'll do it. I'll do it. And that is the end of chapter 84. Onwards to chapter 85, ladies and gentlemen. After this, we'll be officially at the halfway mark. Then I'll take a short break, and then we'll pick up with the remaining chapters. Chapter 85. A rank E hunter wanted to enter an uncleared rank A dungeon? Pure pandemonium broke out. Upper rank monsters are waiting with bated breath inside, yet you want to go in?
Mr. Song, what do you think you're doing?
Yeah, you still have a whole life ahead of you, so why are you risking it all for a measly few extra bucks? The members of the mining team surrounded Jin in no time. At the same time, Foreman Bay hurriedly explained it to Ki-hoon. Oh, that friend only started this job yesterday, so he probably raised his hand not knowing anything. What's his rank? That is... Foreman Bay sneaked a glance towards Jin and then spoke in a hushed voice. It's E. Regardless of what else, his rank is too low, so how about going with someone else? It'll be far too dangerous to take that friend along with you. Ki-hoon's expression became grave right away. That man is only a rank E? The man who locked gazes with him only a second ago, for sure, he couldn't sense any exceptional fluctuation of magic energy coming from that man. However, how should he put this? A certain aura permeated from that man that couldn't be described in simple words, but at the same time, it also felt sharp and utterly under control. He's definitely not a rank E. No matter how hard Ki-hoon looked, that man was definitely not the bottom-ranked hunter he claimed to be. Of course, Foreman Bay had no reason to lie here, but from Ki-hoon's perspective, his own assessment had to be correct. Besides all that, the rank of a porter isn't all that important, is it? Indeed, a porter only needed to carry luggage after all. Oh wait, that was him thinking. Besides all that, the rank of a porter isn't all that important, is it? Indeed, a porter only needed to carry luggage around after all. If the luggage carrier located at the very back of the raid team found himself in danger, then one should look at that raid as a complete failure. In a case like that, not even a rank A could guarantee his survival. So would it really matter if the porter's rank was C or E? They'd die regardless anyway. When Ki-hoon's thought process reached that point, he began regretting the fact that he actually wasted time worrying about it. The raid hadn't even started, yet they had wasted far too much time already. Ki-hoon stared at Jin and spoke. Nope, I'm taking him. Isn't that heavy? Nope, I'm taking him. Isn't that heavy? Ki-hoon asked a question and Jin simply shook his head. No, it's fine. The large bag being carried on Jin's back was filled to the brim with extra sets of clothing, weapons, and defensive equipment, etc. for the raid team. Its volume was quite considerable, but honestly speaking, he didn't find it heavy at all. All thanks to his strength stat, of course. Doesn't look like he's straining himself. After studying Jin's expression for a bit, Ki-hoon turned towards the gate. Jin also shifted his gaze towards it. A giant gate, as big as the one from yesterday, silently floated in the air. Wait, maybe this one's a little bit bigger? Even then, the detected amount of magical energy was supposedly less than yesterday's gate. The raid difficulty was judged by the emitted magic energy and not the size of the gate. That was probably the main reason why the B team was tasked with clearing this particular dungeon.
For real, the leaking magic energy is incomparably smaller than yesterday.
Jin could tell by standing in front of the gate. The result of the association's measurement didn't seem to be wrong. But then, what was this? Just like back when he was standing before the red gate, a certain creeping sense of ill omen was drawing on him.
I hope it's nothing.
Meanwhile, Ki-hoon gave out his order. Let's go inside. The raid team walking in front of the gate began moving once more with that order. Hunters entered the dungeon one by one. Jin stopped staring at the gate and followed them in.
You have entered a dungeon.
The interior of the dungeon was rather plain. Jin had been tense after picking up on that odd feeling, but he let off a sigh of relief after seeing the passage that was noticeably smaller than yesterday's dungeon. Thankfully, he wasn't forcibly transported to another world. The thing was, though, the members of this team were plenty good enough to clear a red gate, were they to step into one. 11 rank A's and 6 rank B's. If it weren't the Hunters Guild but someone else, these guys wouldn't have been assigned to a B team at all. Jin smirked softly.
I'm not here as a part of the raid team anyway. Let's not sweat over stuff like this.
Yesterday and today. If he were being honest, he only came here to have fun, and as coincidence would have it, he was now blessed with more things to spectate on today. There was no need to stay sharp and alert all the time. When he thought like that, he felt as if weight was lifted from his shoulders.
You don't have to be that nervous, you know.
A female hunter, a healer, engaged him in conversation from his side. Was her age around the late 20s or so? Because his expression was stiff, it seemed that she just wanted to help alleviate some of his tension.
You see, every single member present here, not just Ki-hoon Oppa, the leader of the team, is a distinguished hunter. Except me, that is.
The healer lady smiled refreshingly. From the word go, Jin wasn't scared, but after seeing the female hunter's utterly relaxed face, he felt like a deflated balloon. Jin grinned too and nodded his head.
Ah, okay.
The healer, formed a content expression, evidently satisfied by her efforts. At the same time, the leader confirmed that there were no monsters near the entrance and gave the signal to advance. Let's move. Both Jin and the healer matched the walking pace of the raid team and slowly advanced forward. They had to watch the surroundings while moving, so naturally their rate of progress was rather slow.
Should I help you carry some if it's too heavy?
The healer glanced at Jin's luggage and asked him. Jin wordlessly pushed forward a huge bottle of water in his left hand to her.
Ah!
The healer tottered dangerously on her feet trying to lift that, so he quickly took the bottle back. The raid team came to an abrupt stop and glared at the healer.
I'm so sorry. Sorry.
The healer continued to bow her head here and there, offering an embarrassed apology. After that, he didn't get to hear her asking him if he needed help again. Her sharp glares was just an added bonus, really. Jin had to swallow his cackles as he continued to walk forward. That one doesn't count either. Jin had to swallow his cackles as he continued to walk forward, pretending to be oblivious. It sure felt like it's been a long time since he could laugh like this inside a dungeon.
Well, getting distracted even only for a second would potentially get me in a lot of trouble after all.
Especially recently. Just remembering back to the difficulty of the demon's castle and its upper floors made him shudder in his boots. However, today was different. Participating in a raid as an outsider like this every now and then didn't sound like such a bad idea to him. It was then Jin's steps came to a halt. A beat later, the hunters of the raid team all sensed the change in the surroundings. They're coming! Even before Ki-hoon finished giving his order, the hunters of the raid team got into their battle formation. It happened literally in the blink of an eye. Jin was inwardly impressed by that. So, this is how the high-ranked hunters raid. They were definitely a world apart compared to the ragtag raid teams he was used to until now. Heck, pure and bright lights were already emanating from the hands of the naive-looking female healer. Looks like I won't even get a chance to step up here. On one hand, Jin felt reassured, but at the same time he did feel a little bit rueful as well. In any case, monsters finally showed themselves. Beasts, canines. Ki-hoon's eyes narrowed to a slit. A group of monsters resembling hyenas was rushing towards the raid team. They were as big as a medium-sized car, too. Ki-hoon tilted his head slightly. Dungeon jackals? He became sure of it once they got close enough. They were indeed dungeon jackals. Ki-hoon had been standing with his shield covering his front, but then he relaxed a bit and didn't even bother to activate his aggro-attracting skill. And then he simply used his shield to batter down the dungeon jackal, aiming for his neck. What's this? Aren't they dungeon jackals? Other team members, deeply tense until then, began tilting their heads and straightened their hunched stances. Soon, the short death throes of the dungeon jackals filled with the cavern's interior. The jackal monsters were quickly taken care of. Over a dozen dungeon jackals were turned into corpses in the blink of an eye. Hunters dusted their hands, still confused by what happened. What's this?
I don't even have enough time to cast a magic spell before it. I didn't even have enough time to cast a magic spell before it ended.
Why are we fighting dungeon jackals inside a rank A dungeon? Yeah, right. What's happening here?
Wait, did the association idiots screw up again?
The voices were getting louder. Now, normally, one of the basic rules in raiding was to never make loud noises inside a dungeon. However, the appearance of the dungeon jackals was an event shocking enough to make them forget all about even a simple rule like that. Ki-hoon stared at the corpses of the jackals and scratched the back of his head. But why are the monsters from Rank C dungeons appearing here? Ki-hoon scanned his surroundings, looking somewhat dumbfounded. Everyone else was forming similar facial expressions, with the exception of one person. Only Jin was staring at the dead jackals with a grave expression on his face. They are no normal jackals. Jin's eyes narrowed. He could definitely see that the fur around the jackal's neck had been flattened down by something until recently. It was clear evidence of them being tied to something, somewhere. Meaning, the ones that reared these monsters are somewhere else inside this dungeon. Monsters with intellect, in other words. Jin recalled the white phantoms he met back inside the Red Gate. It was now a well-established fact that, regardless of what species it was, intelligent monsters were quite difficult to deal with. Somehow, my premonition might be right after all. It was not a good omen by any stretch of the imagination.
What are you thinking about so seriously like that?
The female hunter peered at Jin as if to bore a hole in him, just like how he had been staring at the jackals. Shh! Jin raised his index finger and covered his lips. Step, 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 step. From the deeper parts of the cave, he could hear the matched footsteps getting closer. The real enemies are coming. Jin stood back up. Other hunters also belatedly realized something was wrong.
Oh my god.
Get ready for battle! Ki-hoon forcibly squeezed his voice out. Finally, the real enemies revealed themselves from the darkness of the cave on the far side.
The eyes of the hunters grew wide from shock. High orcs? What the heck? Why high orcs? Many well-trained high orc warriors now stood in rows before the hunters' eyes. Their number was 22. Not just any high orcs, but they were 22 high orc warriors, which meant that they would be very difficult opponents to fight. Something's wrong, someone muttered softly under his breath. To think, right after the attack of the low-ranked monsters, they now had to battle these high-ranked monsters, famed to be the toughest even among the high ranks. The high orcs pointed their lengthy spears at the hunters. Looks like the momentum of the hunters and the high orcs are about even. Jin quickly retreated to a corner so he could quietly observe the unfolding situation and find the right time to step forward. However, the female hunter obviously didn't share his thought process.
You gotta keep hiding there, okay? You won't get hurt that way.
That kind of infuriated Jin just a wee bit. He closed his eyes shut and took several deep breaths while working hard to calm his boiling head. Soon, the battle began. Towards the attacking high orcs, Ki-hoon activated his aggro skill. However, these orcs didn't really fall for his provocation. And soon, high orcs and melee-type hunters engaged in a bitter close-quarters battle. Swish, swish, crack! Blood splattered everywhere, and a scream reverberated out. Not too long after that, magic spells fired from the magic-type hunters slammed into the high orcs. Boom! Kaboom! The heads of the high orcs exploded after getting struck by the arrows of brilliant light. Unfortunately, there was no follow-up attack. The effects of the magic spells were good, but there was the distinct disadvantage of the lengthy casting time. In a close-quarters battle, high orcs definitely held the upper hand. Heal! Heal! Hurry! The wounded appeared pretty quickly, and healers were kept very busy. Healer Neem! The female healer was also kept very busy, running here and there nonstop.
I'm coming! Coming!
The female healer knelt down next to a heavily groaning hunter with a missing arm. She then quickly began chanting. And then, along with blinding light, the lost arm slowly grew back. That was the light of regeneration only the healers ranked A or above could perform. Just as she concentrated on the injuries of her patient, a tall shadow suddenly loomed over her. The female healer raised her head. A high orc, previously assumed dead, was holding an axe while breathing heavily right beside her. The female healer's face was drained of all color then. Unfortunately, there was no one who could save her nearby. When the orc raised its axe up high, the female healer chose to hug her patient and shield him instead.
No!
However, she couldn't feel any pain no matter how long she waited. Each passing second felt like a minute or more. The female healer sheepishly raised her head up, and she got to witness a rather amazing sight. The orc was actually floating in the air, as its entire body trembled quite noticeably.
But what?
What was happening here? The female healer's eyes opened even wider, but then the head of the high orc was literally ripped off of its body, and then even the part of its spine got dragged out as well. Now that was a display of terrifying power. Plop. While staring at the headless body of the high orc now on the ground, the female hunter formed a totally confused expression.
Because the separated head of the High Orc was still floating in the air. That was why.
Blood got splashed on my clothes.
Jin frowned deeply and threw the head of the High Orc. Pow! Another High Orc was struck down rather unexpectedly by the head of its comrade and collapsed to the ground. Seeing that the victim's neck was twisted around in a bizarre angle, it coming back to life didn't seem very likely.
That makes it 2.
Jin shifted his gaze. Currently, he was in stealth. Both the High Orcs and the Hunters couldn't sense his presence at all. Jin had been sitting back quietly, waiting for a right chance to step forward, because he feared being accused of interfering in other people's raid. But then he belatedly recalled that he had the stealth skill. Wouldn't he be able to do whatever he wanted without running into problems with that skill? The corners of Jin's lips arched up.
Okay, so should I get started for real now?
And then, just in time, he spotted the leader of the raid team, Son Ki-hoon, engaged in a life-or-death battle with 3 High Orcs. Jin's legs moved swiftly. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Chapter 85. Like I said before, I am not taking a lunch break because I'm still rather full from the breakfast I had earlier. So this is just going to be a short break, and then for me, so I can stretch, walk around a little bit, and then I'll come right back and we can continue with Chapter 86 and the rest of the chapters as well. So yeah, taking a stretch break. Back in a bit. All right, break time over. Let's get back to the chapters. Chapter 86 onwards, and then we'll be done. We're making good timing. We're doing good time. Dead air will be cut out in post, so that way you guys can just get the uninterrupted readings of these chapters. Chapter 86. A distance not too far, but not too close either. Just a little push from his legs, and he was instantly far above the ground. When he landed back on the solid earth, the wide back of a High Orc dominated Jin's view. While landing on his feet, he began thinking,
dismantling these High Orcs would be too easy at this rate.
But if he did that, there was no meaning in hiding himself with stealth. Hunters around him, including Son Ki-hoon, were the elites of the Hunters Guild, often referred to as the best in South Korea. If these High Orcs were ripped apart by some unseen force, then they would pretty soon figure out that stealth skill was involved here, as they weren't the same as a scatterbrained female healer.
Well, it's not like there'll be trouble from getting discovered, but...
He was only a day away from the result of his reassignment test being made public, so he didn't want to raise any unnecessary fuss today if he could help it. That was why he was waiting for the raid to fail completely, but the losses to the Hunters would be far too severe by then. For example, that female healer almost got killed just now. That was why. A certain light flickered in Jin's eyes.
So, choose only those that won't get me noticed.
He decided to go with this type of method. It took him the whole of 1, maybe 2 seconds to come to this decision. Right away, both the Baruka's dagger and the Night Killer were already in his hands, summoned out of sheer reflex, even before he could consciously order them to do so.
When did they come out?
A smirk formed on his lips. With the sensation of gripping tight these 2 familiar dagger handles, his wildly pounding heart slowly regained its calmness. What a relief it was that no one could see his expression right now, as he was still in this stealth state. Well, he didn't want to be labeled as a lunatic for smiling all alone in the midst of a desperate battlefield where humans and High Orcs were performing a blood-soaked dance with each other. Especially so with the leader of the raid team, too busy sweating buckets while being surrounded by 3 High Orcs. He'd go mental if he saw Jin right now.
First of all, that one.
Jin moved. He crouched and the reverse grip dagger drew a line on the Achilles heel of a High Orc. Oh, thank you for subscribing, Quinton. I appreciate you. Jin moved. He crouched, and the reverse grip dagger drew a line on the Achilles heel of a high orc. The high orc warrior roared out in pain as the back of its ankle was sliced open without a warning. That was only the beginning. As if he was dancing, his smooth, unbroken movements led him to stab the Baruga's dagger into the side of his first victim. He then pulled the dagger out and proceeded to cut open the back of the knee of another high orc. Perhaps it was impossible to suppress the pain with the adrenaline of the battle. The high orcs froze up when they were attacked in their weak points when least expected. That was enough. Just like how the opening of the sluice gate caused a flood, Ki-hoon seized upon the opening created by the High Orc's fluster to start his counteroffensive. Stab! Ki-hoon raised his head. The long sword held out in his hands was piercing through the heart of the High Orc. The glaring high orc and its trembling lips soon collapsed on its back, the whites of its eyes showing. Thud! Ki-hoon clenched his fist. Yes, I can do this! Just as Ki-hoon was crying out inwardly in elation while still cutting down the surrounding high orcs one by one, Jin was making himself busy by going here and there. Inside the slowed down time, he moved about freely while avoiding being noticed, and he gradually tilted the balance towards the hunter's favor. Slice! Whenever Jin brushed past, wounds large and small appeared on the bodies of the high orcs. The moment these high orcs froze up from wounds being inflicted on them out of nowhere and lost their focus, that would be their end. These highest rank hunters didn't fail to grasp the opportunity and continued to attack. For some reason, it's easier to fight now.
What's going on?
Could we be winning against these many high orcs without a casualty? Even though members of the raid team were growing rather suspicious, hope and excitement were filling up their hearts at the same time. They were resolved to lose one or two of their own before they had entered the battle, but exceeding their own expectations, they were fighting quite well until now. Pow! A mace swung by one of the hunters cracked open the head of a high orc warrior. It was then Jin got to hear a rather welcoming message.
Level up.
Oh. Indeed, there was a reward for him going around and spending his energy. His level had actually gone up. It seemed that him not actually killing the enemy outright or wounding them critically still netted him some experience points. And I did kill 2 of them with my own hands, too. Just found out that mouse pads wear out with time. They do indeed. I got a Logitech long mouse pad for my desk. I keep it clean. I clean it regularly. But they do wear out over time. Not mine's, because mine's is still good. Mine's is still clean. And I only use like one section of space for it for my mouse. But yeah, they do. That's the reason why I like using the bigger ones. And I did kill 2 of them with my own hands, too. He then aided in killing more than 13. Unless he was earning no experience points whatsoever, his level rising up did make sense. Even more excited than before, Jin's movement became a lot faster than before. Slice! Stab! Thanks to Jin's timely and sneaky maneuvers, this battle was rapidly coming to a close. Whew. Jin took a step back and stored his 2 daggers in his inventory before having a quick look around himself. Well, with this much. The current situation seemed to be more or less settled now. And as an added bonus, he even leveled up once, too. Jin's gaze drifted lower. Around 20 or so corpses of high orcs were discarded haphazardly on the ground. Well, if I hunted these down by myself, I'd have gotten up more than a single level, though. I have gone up more than a single level, though. What is with my speech? Sorry. Well, if I hunted these down by myself, I'd have gone up more than a single level, though. Too bad. This here was a dungeon that the Hunters Guild paid a handsome sum for the exclusive right to hunt. This would have to be as far as he could go. Had a big mouse pad for your desk for 6 years already, and you noticed that the spot where you use your mouse had one patch that messes with the mouse tracking and now has a mouse pad over a mouse pad. Wow. Is it like a classic mouse with the ball in the middle, or is it the one that has a light at the bottom where it just tracks where you move? Too bad. This here was a dungeon that the Hunters Guild paid a handsome sum for the exclusive right to hunt. This would have to be as far as he could go. Good. With a satisfied expression on his face, Jin returned to the dark corner of the dungeon, a place where a porter such as himself should be hiding in the first place. Having their positions reversed and now being surrounded by the hunters instead, the last high orc warrior cried out at the top of its lungs. Its scream rang around the interior of the cave rather noisily. While looking at the fall of that high orc, Jin undid his stealth. Meanwhile, hunters were panting heavily. They hurriedly scanned the vicinity, but no matter how hard they looked, there were no more high orcs standing. Did we win? We won? Hold on. Just before everyone could revel in the sensation of victory, their leader Son Ki-hoon confirmed the status of the injured first. Anyone hurt? Does anyone need healing? The truth was, there wouldn't be that many injured in a raid team with a high-ranking healer as one of the members. As long as that person was still breathing, any exterior wounds could be treated right away. So, Ki-hoon wasn't asking about the conditions of the potential injured. No, if he was actually asking if anyone had died in a roundabout way. When his gaze met the female healers, she shook her head. There were a few injured, but no deceased. And better yet, she had finished healing all of the injured just now. In that case. With that, ecstasy filled the faces of the members of the raid team.
We won! We did it! Yeah!
Hunters hugged each other and celebrated. Jin crossed his arms and with a gentle smile on his face, watched the jubilant hunters. Were these high orcs supposed to be tough, though? From his perspective, well, since he didn't have any prior experience in raiding high-ranking dungeons, Jin couldn't really get this loud celebration of the raid team. Jin had no idea that, when planning the raid of a dungeon ranked A or B, hunters not only took in consideration of its ranking, but they even minutely calculated the emitted magic energy before attempting to clear it. High orcs were considered to be a high-tier monster within the rank A dungeons. Not only were they not normal high orcs, but high orc warriors instead, and there were 20 of them to boot. The current result was far closer to being a miracle than anything else, really. The main protagonist of that miracle, Jin, didn't even know the actual worth of his own actions and simply stood there, quietly congratulating the victory of the raid team. In the midst of that, the female healer approached Ki-hoon with a determined face. That was a look of someone wishing to say something important. Jin focused his hearing in that direction.
Excuse me, Ki-hoon Oppa?
Yeah?
You were fighting against the high orcs.
The female healer cautiously described what she saw in minute detail. And that would be the high orc suddenly floating up in the air and proceeded to rip its own head off before killing another orc with its severed head. She carried a dead serious face, too. Ki-hoon was left utterly speechless.
I'm telling you the truth!
As the female healer and her reddened face protested the injustice of it all, Jin could barely suppress his giggles. They basked in the aftermaths of victory for only a little bit longer. The hunters soon gathered around their leader Ki-hoon one by one. "Captain, will we continue on?"
Isn't this going to be too dangerous? We aren't even that far from the entrance, yet we ran into a whole bunch of high orcs already.
How about a strategic retreat? Ki-hoon cast his gaze over the deeper part of the cave, his mouth closed tight. It won't be easy. Jin could sympathize with Ki-hoon a little bit here. While working for the Hunters Guild that boasted 2 rank S hunters in its ranks, today's raid might be the one and only time Ki-hoon would get to lead a raid team. And to think he'd have to retreat so quickly in his very first hunt as a leader. Anyone in his shoes would be tempted to push forward and clear this place. However, if you were a smart, wise leader then... As if he had made his mind up, Ki-hoon's lips quivered slightly. Jin's eyes narrowed to a slit. Fortunately, as it turned out, Ki-hoon wasn't a fool. For the time being, let's retreat. The leader's choice was absolute inside the dungeon. The unspoken rule said that as long as one was a part of the raid team, one had to absolutely follow the commands of the leader. One used to say that, before in war, insubordinate soldiers were executed right away, didn't they? In a certain way, dungeons were a far more dangerous place than any war zone out there. And so, the question of the team's survival or annihilation depended on who the leader was. Thankfully, Ki-hoon didn't disappoint his team members. After hearing his order to retreat, everyone lightly patted their chest.
Whew.
I was really worried that Sun Yong would insist on going until the end, you know? Ki-hoon grinned and slapped the person who said that on the shoulder. I'm not a blind idiot like that. I know that, but look here, Young. Look at my shaking hands. Jin picked up the luggage and placed it on his back. Along with Ki-hoon's orders, the raid team began moving again, although their direction was reversed. Jin smiled wryly. And here I am, hoping to go in a little bit deeper. Regardless of what happened, he was nothing more than a guest. And as a guest, he had no right to run his mouth on this and that about the decision of the house owner, now did he? It was indeed a bit regretful, but it'd have to end here today. The female healer must have found the leader not believing her word a bit cold-hearted because she continued to grumble as she got right next to Jin.
But it really happened, though.
With a big pout on her face, she then stared at Jin, a single strand of hope still persisting in her heart.
Excuse me, by any chance, did you see that high?
I didn't see anything.
Her
hope had been cruelly shot down just then. Jin had to work very hard to make sure that she didn't notice him sniggering to himself. However, not long after they began retreating, the front of the group suddenly came to a halt. Ki-hoon raised his right hand. Everyone, stop! There was confusion evident in his voice. The fatigued hunters walking cautiously forward came to a stop, and so did Jin as well. He had been keeping an eye towards the rear in case the monsters decided to chase after them. The voices of the hunters rose up higher. What the heck is the meaning of this?
What's going on?
Why is the path blocked? Wasn't it fine when we entered earlier? Jin walked past the noisy hunters and got to the front, before reaching out with his hand, and his eyes widened as well. It's been blocked off? The path had been blocked off by an invisible barrier. He immediately recalled the instant dungeons. More specifically, the wall that demarcated the border between the instant dungeon and reality. But he soon shook his head. No, this is different from that. He could detect a certain sense of artificiality from this invisible wall. Seeing that there was a trace of magic energy mixed in, this barrier must have been the result of a magic spell cast by a monster with high intelligence. But why? Why block the path going out and not going in? It was then Jin's head swiveled to its rear. As if it was waiting for this moment, horrendously powerful magic energy waves crashed into the group like a tsunami from the far end of the cavern. How could this be? This was from the boss of this dungeon? The scale of the magic energy emission inside the dungeon was on another realm altogether compared to the one felt outside the gate. Other hunters also must have sensed that absurd amount of magic energy by now, because they began shivering as well.
What the heck? Why am I getting goosebumps all of a sudden?
Watching the complexions of the hunters get paler by the second, Jin came up with a theory. If, let's say, that there is a boss that can hide its presence, then. The wall that wasn't there when they entered, and the boss that bared its fangs only after the barrier had been erected. No way. Did it lay a trap and wait for hunters to enter the dungeon? When thinking like that, a chill ran down Jin's back. And sure enough, from beyond the darkness of the dungeon's interior, the countless sounds of footsteps, far greater than before, reverberated loudly. And that is the end of chapter 86. Unfortunately, I need to step away in order to take the boys outside because they really need to use the bathroom. This will be the last time I step away for an extended period of time, but they have to go outside. Then we'll continue with chapter 87. So hang tight. Don't worry, this will be cut out from the mainstream as well when it becomes a VOD for the rest of you. Also, hi, Ravi. It's good to see you. Looks like I didn't have to take the boys out. It's all good. I'll still cut out this dead air. Chapter 87. What happened next was a bit of a strange phenomenon. As the footsteps from the other side of the cavern grew louder and closer, the hunters were making less and less sound. Oh, you just turned 35? Oh, today's your birthday? Happy birthday, Robbie! Wait, your birthday was today, right? It was today. Yeah, happy birthday to you, Ravi. Yeah, it's your birthday today. Happy birthday! Happy birthday, Ravi. As the footsteps from the other side of the cavern grew louder and closer, the hunters were making less and less sound. Sun Yang? Soon, choking silence enveloped the group. Jin's ears were perked up, though, seizing upon the opening created by his surroundings getting quieter. Jin began counting the numbers of the enemies via their footsteps. Step, step, thud, thud. Thanks to his already enhanced hearing, as well as his high perception stat, he could separate out each of the footsteps to their original owners. 48, 49, 50, 51. There were a total of 51 different footsteps. The steps themselves sounded the same as those of the High Orc warriors. Jin took a look around him. The nervous tension was clearly writ large on the faces of the hunters. It seemed to him that they also had more or less figured out the size of the enemy from the resounding footsteps. This raid team managed to eke out a victory against 22 High Orc warriors, but now 51 of them were coming. That was over twice as many. There's no hope of victory here. The raid team members were thinking of roughly the same opinion. Jin suddenly cast his glance down at his shadow. He momentarily thought that it was wavering ever so slightly just then.
He even thought that his shadow soldiers were howling out, their desire to see blood intensifying. Jin raised his head back up again. His calm heart that stayed still until now began pounding harder. Wait for it. Now wasn't the right time yet. Consoling himself as thus, Jin silently observed the front. Eventually, the monsters revealed themselves. The countless marching high orcs came to a halt just a little bit of distance away from the hunters. High orcs growled as if they'd pounce at any given moment. No words could adequately describe the bloodthirsty aura emitted from over 50 high orc warriors. The result of a battle was pretty obvious even without actually fighting them.
This is crazy.
How can this nonsensical crap be? Hunters spat out long groans. They continued to retreat ever so slightly after feeling the enormous pressure. But too bad, their path was still blocked off.
So, what would they do now?
The hunters were all ready for battle from a while ago. But no one stepped forward yet and simply waited for Ki-hoon's instructions. Hunters spat out long groans. They continued to retreat ever so slightly after feeling the enormous pressure. But too bad, their path was still blocked off. So, what would they do now? The hunters were all ready for battle from a while ago. But no one stepped forward yet and simply waited for Ki-hoon's instructions. Ki-hoon's lips were shut tight in a straight line. Darn it. If only either Chairman Choi Jong-in or Hunter Cha Hae-in were here. Ki-hoon's expression crumpled unsightly. Rank S hunters all possessed incredible powers that could overturn any unfavorable situation. If either one of those two were here, these high orcs would have been nothing at all. Just why, in a situation like this? Why were they here? Ki-hoon had fought alongside them all the time, so he could acutely sense his powerlessness right about now. The absence of a single rank S was a bone-chillingly painful thing indeed. Unfortunately, he couldn't continue to lament his misfortune forever. No, he had to make a decision here. Fighting here will definitely result in our death. However, with their path of retreat blocked off, he no longer had any choice in the matter. The day he chose to become a hunter, the day he stepped foot inside a dungeon for the first time ever, and the day he lost consciousness for the first time after getting heavily injured. Didn't he already guess that a day like today would come sooner or later? Right, that did happen, didn't it? Having resolved himself to meet his maker, Ki-hoon unsheathed his longsword. Ki-hoon took a look at his comrades, and the hunters nodded their heads as if they had been waiting for the signal. Ki-hoon's gaze shifted back to his front. He then brought the shield right up till his chin and glared at the high orcs, still not showing any signs of movements yet. So, did he finally make his choice then? Jin also got ready. He hid his right hand behind his back, and the Baruka's dagger appeared there. He then closed his eyes. His wildly beating heart suddenly settled down completely as the battle drew near. Get rid of distracting thoughts and control his breathing. Okay. When Jin reopened his eyes, a sharp gleaming light was now burning fiercely within them. Hunters forcibly swallowed their dried saliva. That's 3! We're past the halfway mark, and that's the 3rd time we've had that. Cold sweat soaked their foreheads. On the other hand, Jin was busy smacking his lips. How much experience points will these guys give me? A thin smile of anticipation spread on his lips. However, before anything could happen, one of the high orcs stepped forward.
It roughly shoved aside other orcs and emerged from the group, its wild beast-like eyes looking in the direction of the hunters.
Brr.
This one possessed a far bigger physique than the others, and its fangs were noticeably longer as well.
So, is that the leader?
Jin narrowed his eyes. If he got rid of that guy now, wouldn't the fight become so much easier? What should he do here, then? Jin fiddled with the grip of the Baraka's dagger and pondered. Meanwhile, that high orc opened its mouth. The creature's voice sure sounded loud. The glare of the high orc was fixed to the leader of the raid team, Ki-hoon. Hunter's gazes busily darted about.
What the heck?
Is that thing trying to talk to us?
What is it saying?
It was then the facial muscles of the high orc began trembling. When that strange tremor subsided, a completely different voice from before came out from the monster's mouth.
Humans.
It was as if something else had borrowed the monster's voice to speak.
Oh, humans.
When looking at it closer, that normal-looking orc's eyes were now unfocused and blurry like those of a dead fish that died a long time ago. Hunters began freaking out as if the back of their heads were smacked out of nowhere. An orc just spoke a language of humans.
How can an orc speak Korean? Is this magic?
Could it be? Hunters couldn't keep their mouths shut at this utterly unexpected situation. The leader, high orc, continued to speak.
I am Karugalgan. I want to meet humans. Follow this one.
A monster wished to speak to humans? There never had been any reports of such a case before. Facing this unprecedented event, not only Ki-hoon but everyone in the raid team fell into a state of pure confusion.
Ki-Hu-young, I hope you ain't listening to the words of a monster. Please, you gotta ignore it. Ki-hoona, it's a trap. Regardless what happens, we gotta try to finish it here. But still, if it's an orc we can talk to, maybe we can... Don't be an idiot! You've been inside so many dungeons already, so don't you know how they operate by now?
In less than a second, their opinions had split up. Ki-hoon maintained his silence for a while before answering the monster's words. Kargalgan, did you block the cavern?
That's right. I am the proud High Shaman of the Orcs. My spells cannot be broken by the strength of humans.
Is there anyone stronger than you inside this cave?
Who dares to oppose me?
An incredibly loud roar exploded out from the high orc and slammed into the eardrums of the hunters. Almost everyone frowned deeply and covered their ears, but Ki-hoon was simply nodding his head, still looking rather calm. His expectation was on the money. The existence speaking through that high orc's mouth was, without a doubt, the boss of this dungeon. Since it couldn't escape from the boss room until the time of the dungeon break, it was summoning the hunters to enter its lair instead. I don't know why it wants us here, but... When Ki-hoon's answer didn't come right away, the leader high orc raised its large axe above its head.
Now choose
die here at the hands of my soldiers, or follow my soldiers.
We'll follow. Ki-hoon's immediate answer prompted the eyes of the hunters to grow wider.
Ki-hoon-young! Mr. Ki-hoon!
Ki-hoon interrupted his comrades trying to dissuade him and waited for the reaction of the High Orc.
Then come, human.
With the end of those words, the blurred eyes of the leader High Orc regained its original clarity, and that would be wild beast-like glare of bloodlust. The creature spoke up again.
Ashritulika.
With that one sentence, the High Orc warriors, burning with fierce hostility, withdrew as if it was all a lie. The leader High Orc waited without withdrawing, and beckoned to Ki-hoon, telling him to follow. Let's get going as well. Ki-hoon was the first to start walking, and the hesitant hunters began to follow after him one after the other. What is he thinking? Jin stared with a puzzled expression on his face. There was little doubt that not only the boss, but countless more High Orcs would be waiting for them inside the boss room, meaning their odds of victory would be even lower on that side. So it was hard to figure out what Ki-hoon was thinking of when he chose to follow the monsters. Is he trying to negotiate with the boss in order to get out of here alive? Although the odds of that succeeding was extremely low. No, maybe this was for the better. Jin originally believed that this raid would end with him hunting down a few mob creatures, but now he got himself a chance to meet the boss instead. He returned the dagger back to his inventory and slowly followed after the group. Just how long did they walk? Ki-hoon slowed down his walking speed gradually and had arrived at Jin's side, and then he called out with a hushed voice. Hunter Neem. Yes? Jin continued looking at the front while answering him. Ki-hoon, too, continued to stare at the backs of the High Orcs walking further up ahead. As soon as we meet the boss, we're going to attack right away. When that happens, regardless of whether our attack was successful or not, the bastard should not be able to maintain the magic spell blocking the exit. That made a certain amount of sense. Unless it was some kind of hex-type magic, one had to keep one's focus in order to maintain a spell, especially if one wanted to maintain high-class magic. An incredible mental focus was a necessity. However, what about it? Didn't matter whether they succeeded in killing the boss or managed to cancel the magic blocking the exit. They would still meet a dog's death right away inside the boss room after getting surrounded by the countless High Orcs anyway. The odds of this raid team returning alive were still pathetically low. Perhaps to answer Jin's curiosity, Ki-hoon spoke with a grave expression on his face. While their attention is on us, Hunter Neem, please escape from the boss room. Once you get out of the dungeon, you must alert the main assault force. By the time the assault team consisting of rank S hunters arrive here, everything would be over for them. Ki-hoon was getting ready to die. Are you thinking of dying alongside the boss? Jin sneaked a glance at Ki-hoon's expression. His face remained hardened, but there was no wavering in his eyes. Our job isn't to get out of this dungeon alive, but to close the gates. Many people outside are paying us a great deal of money for that purpose. Ki-hoon's voice gained more conviction as he spoke. We will do our job according to what we've been training for. However, you're different. There's no reason for you to die here. I hope you can get out of this place alive. One could now hear the unwavering belief in his voice. His words contained his determination. Jin realized that nothing he could say right now would be of any help to Ki-hoon. So he simply nodded his head as his reply. Cha Hei-in finally arrived at the location of the second Renge Gate. She had her baseball cap pushed down low, and as a result, only a few passers-by recognized her. The first thing she did was to seek out the mining team.
A few hunters walked past her and sneaked a couple of glances, but they were all working for the guild anyway, and none of them paid her any great attention after that. Eventually, she could see Foreman Bay in the distance, as well as the mining team around them. Her heart began beating faster. Standing a little bit of a distance from them, she scanned the faces of each miner present.
Where is he?
She couldn't see Jin among them. How could she say this? It felt like all of her energy was abandoning her at once.
Did he give up on being a miner? Why don't I wait for another minute? He could have left the spot for only a moment and is coming back soon.
3 minutes more. No, maybe 5. And so, she waited for another 15 minutes, but Jin didn't show up in the end. After spitting out a long sigh, Cha Hae-in turned around to leave. But, only after taking a couple of steps, she turned around again and returned to her original spot. She yanked her cap off and took in several deep breaths before walking towards Foreman Bay. The gazes of the mining team members were directed to her now. Thankfully, the stink wasn't so bad, perhaps due to the ranks of hunters in the mining team being low. Recognizing Cha Hae-in, Foreman Bay quickly ran over to her. Cha Hunter Neem, I thought you were taking a break today.
Hello there.
Cha shared a simple greeting with Foreman Bay, and after making sure that no one was eavesdropping on her, she cautiously asked him for a question.
By any chance, is there a hunter named Sung Jinu working for you?
Mr. Sung? Hearing an unexpected name being mentioned out of the blue, Foreman Bay formed a surprised expression. If you're looking for Mr. Sung, he's up for a porter's job.
A porter?
Cha gasped out in shock.
Are you saying he actually went inside the gate?
Foreman Bay nodded his head vigorously, as if to show that he too couldn't believe it. Yes, miss, that's what happened. A ranky hunter volunteered as a porter and entered a rank A dungeon? And he didn't even have dozens of lives or anything, too.
What was he thinking?
But when Cha thought about it, didn't she find that man loitering around the boss room yesterday with weapons in his hands? Indeed, she did not see wrong back there. One more thing to be suspicious of, then. Even though she ended up letting go of yesterday's event as a coincidence, when she really thought about it in detail, it was a rather strange thing for a hunter with 4 years of experience getting lost inside a dungeon like that.
I need to find out.
She began thinking that she simply had to confirm what this hunter named Sung Jinu wanted from her Hunter's Guild. And in order to do so, she had to enter the dungeon. Not only was she the vice chairman of the Hunter's Guild, but she was also a rank S hunter as well. No one would stop her if she wanted to enter a dungeon where the Hunter's Guild was performing a raid. Cha lightly bit into her thumb while pondering her choices before swiftly making her decision.
I'll have to enter the gate myself.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Chapter 87. Onwards to Chapter 88. Foreman Bay's eyes went extra wide. Was there some kind of an accident? Should we ask the guild for additional personnel?
No need. It's a personal matter. I just wanted to talk to him about something private, so you don't have to worry.
Oh, I see. Cha spun towards the gate. However, her side felt rather empty then.
Ah, my weapon.
She felt around her waist only to belatedly remember that she had left her sword back home. Since she never imagined that she'd be entering a dungeon on her day off like this, well... Cha's forehead beautifully creased up.
As a leader, Mr. Ki-hoon is someone totally trustworthy, and the rest of the team are made up of capable hunters, but...
But it was still unimaginable to enter a dungeon without a weapon in hand. A short deliberation later, she turned around to face Foreman Bay once more. Is there something else, miss? Foreman Bay looked at her with confused eyes.
Mr. Foreman, can I borrow a weapon from you?
Pardon me? Foreman Bay hesitated somewhat before calling out to a hunter passing by. Hey, over here, Mr. Soak. Please bring me one of our equipments. Yes, boss. The equipment Mr. Sok rapidly brought over was a pickaxe, as used by the mining team. Cha's expression stiffened.
Excuse me, don't you have anything else?
Such as...
For instance, swords or spears?
But if you ask us for such things, well... Cha sighed out under her breath.
I understand.
She then carefully rejected the pickaxe Foreman Bay tried to hand over and quickly walked towards the gate. He anxiously asked her as he watched her distancing back. Cha Hunter name, will it be fine for you to be empty-handed in there? Cha came to an abrupt halt and stood there for a moment, before hurriedly walking back to take the pickaxe from Foreman Bay. He guffawed out in a genial manner. I think that's for the best, miss. I mean, it'll be dangerous to be weaponless inside a dungeon, regardless of what.
Well then.
As she turned around to hurriedly leave, Foreman Bay unluckily didn't get to see her eyes dried in deep deep shades of crimson. Not dried, but dyed. Foreman Bay unluckily didn't get to see her eyes dyed in deep shades of crimson. The looks of determination were clearly visible on the faces of the raid team members. They kept their mouths resolutely shut as if to imply that they knew their fate already. Meanwhile, the female hunter approached Jin and began rummaging through the luggage. Jin turned his head towards her and asked, "What are you doing?"
Hold on.
What she took out was a small lady's handbag.
I kind of feel a bit uncomfortable if I'm too far away from my bag, you see?
He didn't even ask her, yet she provided him with the explanation oh so kindly. She took out a memo pad and a pen from the bag and then began jotting something down on said memo pad. Because she wasn't looking in front of her, she kept bumping into Jin's shoulder with her head. Eventually, though, she closed the memo pad. Her bag, which she slung around her shoulder while writing on the memo, was pushed back inside the luggage again. Luggage. I can't even say luggage. What's wrong with me right now? Her bag, which she slung around her shoulder while writing on the memo, was pushed back inside the luggage again. But that memo remained in her hands. Jin observed her with a bit of interest, wondering what she'd do with that. But she simply pushed the memo towards him instead. After taking it, Jin tilted his head, prompting the female healer to tearfully speak up.
I wrote down what I wanted to say to my family. When you get outside, please make sure that they get it. Please.
If he burst out in laughter, she'd probably get hurt, no? Jin suppressed his rising laughter and pocketed the memo. I'll hold on to this for the time being, but I'm pretty sure I won't get to deliver this. It's going to be fine. The female healer nodded her head.
With High Orcs warriors zealously keeping tabs on us like this, it won't be easy for him to get out of here unscathed.
After all, Mr. Porter was only a rank E. She hadn't figured out yet what Jin meant, though. Soon their eyes caught the sight of the boss room. The anxiety felt by the hunters came over the air and could be felt on his skin. They were greeted by a huge open space. Jin scanned the boss room. It was smaller than yesterday's boss room with the giant in it. However, quite unlike yesterday, he didn't get the impression that the boss room was huge at all. And that was all thanks to countless high orcs completely filling up the chamber. As a matter of fact, there were over twice as many orcs here as those that escorted the raid team. At least 100. No, maybe it's a bit more than that. While there were no monsters inside the rest of the dungeon, they had been gathered inside the boss room instead. Seeing the masses of high orcs waiting inside, Ki-hoon's complexion paled in an instant. If this many high orcs managed to escape from the gate, then... This was a large enough horde to utterly destroy a small city, even before the top hunters had the chance to do something about them. Cold sweat trickled down his backside. What a description. At the very least, we gotta eliminate the boss. just like how he resolutely swallowed the dry saliva. That's 4 now. He did his best to keep his determination burning in his heart. The high orcs of the boss room parted to make way.
Shocker!
The leader high orc beckoned again. The raid team and the escorting high orcs walked over to an altar located in this corner of the boss room. Over there! One of the hunters pointed towards the top of the altar, and that's where the high orc shaman stood, dressed in all manner of accessories adorning its entire body, including a mask, bone necklace, and earrings. So that's the boss. Ki-hoon's expression hardened. He immediately realized that the terrifying magic energy filling up the interior of this dungeon was being emitted from that creature. And then, surrounding that jerk was... From the 4 guards possessing an air of alertness standing around the boss, he also sensed a rather ominous aura as well. This isn't good. Could the raid team get past those guards and kill the shaman in one fell swoop? The hunters were all thinking roughly the same thing. The hunters stopped in front of the shaman. A certain intangible tension flowed in between the high orcs surrounding the human hunters as they kept a certain distance away. However, the shaman didn't seem to care about the mood of the place. It simply opened its rather malformed jaw, visible below the mask, and cackled out.
Oh, humans, welcome.
The hunters of the raid team exchanged glances.
As soon as Sun Hyung gives us a signal, we attack together. Aim for the shaman, no matter what.
It was for the purpose of coordinating their attacks. However, suddenly, the air around them began freezing up. Hunters of this raid team were some of the best out there. They all shifted their gazes at the same time at this sudden outpouring of chilling aura. The source was the shaman. The creature finally took the mask off. When it did, the magic energy it had been hiding until then exploded forth, unchecked and unhindered.
Rumble!
The freakish magic power spread out in circular waves with the boss at the center. As if they were normal, powerless civilians that ran into a lion or a tiger, the hunters froze up on the spot like a bunch of statues.
Huh? Oh my god!
How can a magic power of such magnitude be? We gotta fight against something like this? Despair, lamentation, resentment, even regret. The shaman formed an ominous grin when facing these varying forms of hopelessness.
Are you scared of me, humans?
Ki-hoon bit down on his lower lip hard and took a difficult step forward before asking a question. Why did you summon us here? Your warriors would have been enough to kill us back there. The shaman grinned again. Simply looking at the grin chilled the backs of the hunters.
It's for entertainment.
What? Ki-hoon was left utterly speechless. Were they just brought here for that purpose? The shaman continued on.
While we wait out the remaining time, I will kill you one by one and entertain the soldiers.
High orc warriors all roared out in frenzy and excitement. Hunters were ruthlessly forced down by the enormous pressure emitted from the orcs and couldn't even breathe properly. One of them even began crying, no less.
However,
the shaman briefly stopped talking then. The boss's gaze shifted and stopped at the rear of the humans' group, where Jin was.
I see that a strange being is mixed among you, humans.
It was then Ki-hoon's eyes gleamed dangerously. With the shaman looking elsewhere, this is my chance! Veins bulged in his neck. Now! Ki-hoon roared at the top of his lungs, unsheathed his sword, and rushed out. However, it was eerily quiet behind him. How come? He glanced behind him while running and discovered his comrades rooted to their spots, not daring to move an inch. They had lost their fighting spirit a long time ago from the display of the boss's overwhelming might. Ki-hoon's heart fell to the pit of his stomach. Still, someone had to do this. He couldn't stop now. His gaze shifted back to the front. Perhaps his attack wasn't expected. The shaman was still smiling, and its guards weren't showing any urgent reactions either. This could be his one and only chance. Didn't matter if it was pure luck. He'd accept fluke too, as long as his sword could reach. Ki-hoon fiercely rushed forward and cocked his sword behind him. But even before he could swing the sword with all his might, he collided with something invisible and was flung away. Boom! At first, it was shield magic. Flung away from the rebound, Ki-hoon landed on the ground and rolled backwards. But that lasted only for a short while.
Looks like we have our first volunteer.
Along with the shaman's mocking words, Ki-hoon's body was lifted up into the air. And now, it was the gravity magic. The lips of the shaman were moving up and down non-stop. When Ki-hoon was lifted up as high as a 2-story building, the shaman began chanting a different spell. To come was gravity acceleration. Kaboom! I keep giving myself hiccups doing this. Kaboom! Ki-hoon was slammed into the ground. He didn't even have the time to writhe in pain as he was lifted up in the air again.
Anti-gravity.
Love the Hulk reference scene? He didn't even have the time to writhe in pain as he was lifted up in the air again. And I'm trying to get these hiccups. I'm trying to do these voices, but these hiccups keep interrupting me. Oh, they keep interrupting me.
Anti-gravity.
I'm trying to get rid of these hiccups, man. They messing me up so bad. Not only the shaman, but the rest of the Hyoks were cackling in derision as well, their fangs fully bared now. Kaboom! Boom! The shaman continued to toy with Ki-hoon by lifting him up and slamming him down. If these hiccups don't stop interrupting my words. The shaman continued to toy with Ki-hoon by lifting... If these hiccups don't get out of my body! The shaman continued to toy with Ki-hoon by lifting him up and slamming him down. Okay, I can read it normally now. The shaman continued to toy with Ki-hoon by lifting him up and slamming him down. When he landed on the ground for the 4th time, Ki-hoon vomited out a mouthful of blood. Seeing that scene, the complexions of the hunters got paler and paler. However, none of them dared to step forward to stop this.
Ki-hoon young.
They simply stood there trembling while witnessing Ki-hoon being broken into pieces. Plop! The female healer collapsed on the floor as if she no longer had any strength left in her legs. Eventually, the shaman raised Ki-hoon in the air for the first time. For the 5th time. What are these words? First it's hiccups and then it's me fumbling words. The shaman raised Ki-hoon in the air for the 5th time.
You sure are a tenacious bastard, aren't you?
A pained moan leaked out of Ki-hoon's mouth. However, he still didn't let go of the sword as if he hadn't given up yet. Vroom, slam, vroom, slam, vroom. As he was thrown up and down between the air and ground several times more, Ki-hoon finally lost his grip on the sword. Clang! It happened then. Just as Ki-hoon was thrown down to the ground once more, he vanished from view. The shaman's eyes opened wider. Where did the human disappear to? When all of his bones should be broken by now, the shaman searched for the whereabouts of Ki-hoon.
There.
In a corner not too far, it discovered Ki-hoon unmoving on the ground, and at the same time found a certain man crouching nearby. Of course, it was Jin. Jin carefully laid Ki-hoon down and glared at the shaman.
Hey, Mr. Leader, I want to ask you something.
Until now, Ki-hoon hadn't figured out what happened to him.
Will it be okay if I kill all of the monsters in here? What are you?
The shaman frowned and gestured with its chin, and one of the guards swung about its scimitar and ran to where Jin was. As Jin glared at the monster rushing towards him, a light of fury lit up in his eyes. He reached out with his hands.
Ruler's reach.
When he did, it was as if a giant invisible hand grabbed the orc guard and the monster was cleanly picked up from the ground. The monster kicked and struggled in the air.
What?
The eyes of the shaman opened wider. Jin pointed down towards the ground.
Slam!
The guard crashed down to the ground. The impact force was so great that deep cracks spread out on the ground. However, Jin didn't stop there. Just like how the shaman manipulated Ki-hoon's body, he lifted the guard up in the air again.
Slam! Boom! Kaboom!
Like a basketball bouncing between the ground and one's hand, the orc guard continuously slammed into the ceiling and the ground non-stop, a helpless cry coming out from its mouth. Eventually, its head pierced into the ceiling.
Kaboom! Scatter.
With that, debris from the ceiling fell down. While staring at the dangling orc guard with its head buried into the ceiling, both groups of the high orcs and the hunters couldn't hide their astonishment. Ki-hoon trembled and questioned Jin.
What is your... I'll ask you again.
This here was a hunting ground the Hunters Guild paid for, and there was only one person present that could speak for the guild at the moment. Jin asked for the last time.
Monsters in this place. Can I have them all?
What was this? Ki-hoon realized now that the identity of the porter or whatever didn't matter anymore. No, he was just ticked off. He was angry at himself for being toyed around with by the monsters like that. Tears rolled down Ki-hoon's face.
Please, I beg of you, do something.
With that, it was done. When Jin stood back up, high orcs approached him. The shaman was behind them. The boss began smirking in derision.
For a measly human, you know some interesting skills, don't you?
The boss gestured, and the high orcs quickly surrounded Jin.
However, just how far do you think your tricks will get you?
Jin's glare became so much colder. He never really cared for any of the monsters he killed so far, but this would be his first time wanting to slice one up this badly.
I'll take care of you last.
If the boss knew the meaning of enjoyment, surely it'd know what fear tasted like. Jin slowly murmured out, "My shadows." 2 daggers appeared in Jin's hands. "Come out and play." And that is the end of chapter 88. Onwards to chapter 89, then 90, and then we're done. Chapter 89. Screech! I'm not going to do that screeching sound that I did last time. Screech! A black sedan stopped by the side of the road. The man climbing out of the driver's seat, kitted out in a pair of sunglasses and a black business suit, was none other than Wu Jinqiu, the section chief of the monitoring division, the Hunters Association. Soon after his visit, 3 more men climbed out of the car from the passenger and rear seats. All of them were from the monitoring division as well. "Chief, weren't we on our way back to the association?" "I just wanted to confirm something first." Wu shifted his gaze over to the gate, some distance away. "A rank A gate still gives me the creeps every time I look at it." Won't ever forget that? Yep, I'm not going to make that sound ever again. "A rank A gate still gives me the creeps every time I look at it." Wu frowned deeply. If that giant hole opened up like a door and monsters trapped inside emerged outside, just imagining that made him shudder. However, why did that man apply to be a miner in such a horrifying place? Not only that, for 2 days in a row, too. Even if Association President Gogun He hadn't axed him, Wu would have personally come here to find out anyway. Investigating behind his back is impossible. The man in question was a rank S awakened. A measly rank A like him going undiscovered while secretly investigating a rank S was, realistically speaking, an impossible dream. That was why he decided to show up in the open like this. Since he had a matter to attend to nearby anyway, he was thinking of greeting the youth while saying he was in the neighborhood, and then ask a couple of simple questions. I hope he won't find me strange or anything. Anyone would get curious of the circumstances of if a hunter, already pretty much confirmed to be a rank S, chose to shovel the ground for some reason. On top of this, wasn't Sung Jinu someone the association president was paying close attention to? The association president must have found this young man very much to his liking, because he even focused all of his attention on everything Jin did. No, I'm not the strange one here. It was obvious that you'd get curious, and it was only natural to ask. While telling himself that, Wu walked over to where the representative of the Hunters Guild was. I'm looking for your mining team. Who are you? I'm from the association. The guild employee confirmed. Who are you? I'm from the association. The guild employee confirmed Wu's identity and pointed in the direction of the waiting mining team. Please head over that way. Thank you. 4 hunters from the monitoring division were now paying a visit to the mining team. As if he had received a heads up already, Foreman Bei Yun-sok hurriedly ran to meet them halfway. What brings the hunters from the monitoring division to this place? The members of the mining team had been relaxing until then, overheard those words, and tension briefly flashed by in their eyes. The oppressive pressure hunters felt from the words monitoring division was rather huge. The people whose job was to arrest the awakened that the normal laws couldn't do anything about. They then either reformed the troublemakers or simply eliminated them. The monitoring division was where those kinds of people worked for. What's going on? Hunters from the monitoring division are here. Monitoring division? Something must have happened. Feeling curious now, the mining team members began flocking around Foreman Bei. Wu took his sunglasses off. He swept his gaze around the miners to locate Jin, but in the end he had to ask for that man's whereabouts from Foreman Bei. Do you know by any chance where Sung Jinu Hunter name is?
I bloody knew it.
I bloody knew it. Suddenly, a man jumped out from among the miners. It was Lee Sung-gu, who had run into Jin's shoulder yesterday. Lee Sung-gu passionately spat out his complaints, flying spittle accompanying his rapidly firing words. When that jerk looked at me and began grinning, I was terrified that he might eat me alive or something, you know? It's still so scary even when I think about it now. Wu's brows furrowed slightly. Terrifying enough to eat a person? Just what on earth was this man talking about? The voices of the hunters rose up higher and higher. Wu ignored the background noise and asked Lee Sung-gu. Did something happen?
Well, that is...
Lee was about to answer him, but then he rapidly realized that he was also at fault and quickly waved his hands around.
Well, that isn't really important, but the main thing is, his eyes were really scary, man.
Wu's gaze shifted back to Foreman Bay. Where can I find Sung Jinu Hunter name?
Mr. Sung he's inside the gate right now.
Sung Jinu was inside the Rank A dungeon, where a raid was ongoing. Wu's eyes opened wider. Why did he enter the dungeon?
Well, the raid team's porter hasn't shown up today, you see. Nobody wanted to go in there, so Mr. Sung volunteered as the porter. But it's a wee bit weird, you know?
What do you mean?
Well, it's nothing particular, but Cha Hae-in Hunter Neem was also looking for Mr. Sung, so she entered the gate just now, you know? Isn't it just too weird?
Foreman Bay spoke up to this and tilted his head. Foreman Bay spoke up to there and tilted his head. Meanwhile, the mind of Wu... I didn't understand how that sentence was written. Please forgive me for that. Meanwhile, the mind of Wu became a bit of a mess after hearing that. The vice chairman of the Hunters Guild, Cha Hae-in, was looking for Sung Jinu. Not only that, she even went after him in the dungeon, too. Just what was happening here? He only stopped by to say hello to Jin, but now it felt like something big was afoot here. For the time being, I should head over to the gate. That seemed to be the best choice he could make for the time being. We'll stop by at the gate and leave afterwards.
Oh, sure thing.
Foreman Bay chuckled genially and nodded his head, just as Wu and his subordinates turned around to leave. Lee quickly grabbed his arm.
Excuse me, Mr. Hunter?
Lee had this expectant face for some reason as he hurriedly asked Wu.
That jerk is Sung Jinu. Did he do something bad? Maybe he's killed someone. I mean, he looked like someone fully capable of that.
Wu frowned slightly again. He could sort of understand why Jin glared scarily at this moron. A fool who'd get blown away in the weeds if Sung Jinu snorts in front of him. Still, there were too many eyes watching. As a hunter working for the association, he couldn't carelessly display his irritation at a stranger. This was why working for a public organization sometimes could get rather annoying. Wu spat out a long sigh and did his best to sound as diplomatic as possible. You'll find out when you take a look at tomorrow's evening news broadcast. Perhaps that answered most of his own suspicions. Lee raised his voice high as if he had correctly predicted this.
I told you, didn't I? I told you that man was too suspicious.
But he didn't look that way.
Right, and he worked so diligently, too. Not minding the lukewarm responses of his colleagues, Lee went on about how great his discerning eyes were.
Tch.
Wu stared at that man making a fool of himself before taking his subordinates towards the gate. However, Wu instinctively stopped a few steps away from the gate. Chief? The subordinates began staring in confusion at Wu's stiff face. This can't be. It makes no sense. Wu quickly yanked his phone out. He then accessed the association's information hub and checked out the available info on the Rank A gate the Hunters Guild was supposed to conquer today. Wu's eyes widened in shock. Why is the measured value of the magic energy so low? His head began rocking side to side automatically. The measurement results are wrong. Not all rank A hunters were equal. For instance, Hunter Wu Jinshou was right near the top within the rank A, and his instincts were telling him this. The measurement value was all wrong. Wu quickly issued an order to his subordinate next to him. Go get the magic energy measuring device. The subordinate immediately realized that Wu's expression was grave and hurriedly ran to where their car was parked. The miniature measuring device used by the monitoring division was a world apart in quality from the devices used by the regular association employees. As befitting a device created from a top-grade magic crystal that cost over 1 billion won, this piece of equipment very rarely threw up errors or mistakes in its results. Boop! The measurement result quickly came out. I knew it. The displayed results showed a clear discrepancy to the previously measured value. If the guild formed their raid team according to the measured value presented by the association, then it definitely become a serious situation. Well, with 2 rank S hunters inside, I'm sure nothing untoward would happen, but when Wu placed the measuring device on the ground and tried to stand back up, the gate suddenly began vibrating. The powerful gushing magic energy wave caused Wu and his 3 subordinates with far worse perceptions than him to flinch grandly on the spot. They began trembling like leaves right away. Section Chief? What was that, sir? Wu shifted his gaze to the youngest of the agents present, the kid's complexion looking awfully pale now. You okay? Yes, sir. I'm okay. The youngest agent cautiously stared at the back of his hand after making his reply. He could see goosebumps covering up his skin. Wu stood upright. We're going inside. Pardon me? You want to go in there, sir? Wu's determination didn't waver, even for a second. If you're scared, it's okay for you to back out. Only he knew that the measurement value was incorrect at this stage. It was his duty to inform the hunters trapped inside. It was the duty of the association's agents to manage other hunters and to keep a close watch on them, but also to aid them in time of their needs. No, sir. We'll go with you. Wu nodded his head in satisfaction. Junior, stay behind and report the new measurement result back to the association. Yes. No. Wait. Sir? Can you do it? Wu lightly tapped the youngest agent here on the shoulder, and the latter nodded his head with some difficulty. Yes, sir. I understand. Wu turned to look back at the gate. On top of its already nonsensically high magic energy emission, an even greater storm of magic power rushed out from the gate just now. What the heck is going on inside this gate? With Wu as the lead, the 2 agents in the monitoring division also threw themselves beyond the gate's surface. Around the same time, Cha Heiyin was following after the traces left behind the raid team.
This is so weird. Why can't I find the traces of monsters?
In a regular dungeon, it was normal to find the corpses of monsters strewn about here and there, starting from somewhere near the entrance and all the way till the boss room. But no matter how hard she looked, she couldn't see any dead monsters. Did the monsters gather in one place or something? She thought like this and continued to walk forward until...
Huh?
She finally located corpses in the distance. As befitting a rank S melee-type hunter, Cha arrived at the location of the battle in the blink of an eye.
How can this be?
Her eyes opened up super wide. All the corpses belonged to the High Orcs. It was easy to identify them, because they featured red skin and their fangs were noticeably longer too.
How did Mr. Sun Ki-hon's team manage to defeat this many High Orcs?
And was that all? There was seemingly not one casualty too. Of course, if there was a casualty, they would have retreated on their own accord, saving her the trouble of having to step foot inside there.
Did I underestimate the rank A and B hunters by too much?
That could certainly be the case. Surveying the location, she thought that the battle had to be a bit one-sided as well. However,
Wait, isn't that...
Cha discovered something odd and crouched down to take a closer look at one of the corpses. And her eyes grew even wider than before. She stood back up and quickly began checking out each of the high orc corpses.
This one. And this one too.
Her suspicion gradually morphed into certainty.
But how?
How could something like this happen? Almost all the high orcs were left with injuries inflicted by short but incredibly sharp weapons.
They weren't blows fatal enough to kill, but
she thought that these were definitely enough to hinder the movements of the high orcs, which meant that other hunters were simply dining on the table full of tasty dishes prepared by someone else. It also meant that one hunter managed to almost single-handedly massacre all 20 high orcs. Only 2 high orcs were killed off in a different fashion to everyone else. One had its head ripped off by an incredible force, while the other had died after something blunt hit it in the head.
excluding those 2, one person managed to drive all the other orcs to the brink of death?
Could such a thing even be possible? She was deeply confident of her own speed, but even then she couldn't be sure of achieving the same feat under the same given situation. And also, from what she knew, there was no assassin-type hunter wielding daggers or short swords within Ki-hoon's team.
Short swords?
It was then a certain scene flashed. Plasterbrain, the man who stood near the boss room yesterday. Sung Jinu was definitely holding short weapons in both of his hands.
Could it be that man?
When her thoughts arrived at that point, Cha Hae-in's head snapped towards the deeper parts of the dungeon, and her expression rapidly hardened. She could sense this incredibly powerful magic energy tremors, the kind she'd never experienced before coming from there. The air itself was trembling hard.
No!
Cha bit her lower lips. If that magical energy belonged to the boss monster, then no one from Ki-hoon's team would be able to survive. She began running towards the boss room with all her might. And that's the end of chapter 89. Onwards to the last chapter for this reading, ladies and gentlemen, and then I'll call it a session. I said, that's the end of chapter 89, onwards to chapter 90. Yeah, chapter 90! Come out and play. Everything began with those words. A ripple incomparably greater than that of the magic energy wave from the High Orc Shaman spread out everywhere. That wasn't the only change to take place, however. Along with him unshackling his magic power, the shadow beneath Jin's feet spread out too, and it covered the entirety of the chamber's surface at a frightening pace, as if someone had poured a bucket of pitch-black ink onto the floor.
What's this?
The hunters of Ki-hoon's raid team saw the shadow spread beneath their feet and freaked out. How should they even go about describing this situation? Even the most experienced grizzled hunters among the group hadn't heard of anything like this, never mind seeing one. Tremble. An unknown fear crept up over them. Ki-hoon, lying on the ground, powerlessly began trembling. Sorry about that. For a moment there, I thought someone was knocking on my door. Ki-hoon, lying on the ground, powerlessly began trembling violently while staring up at Jin.
What? Just what are you planning to do?
As if to answer his silent question, when the spreading shadow completely covered the floor of the boss room. The surface of the shadow wavered, and soldiers wearing jet-black armor rose up one by one.
You have activated skill, Sovereign's Territory. All stats of the shadow soldiers fighting over the summoner's shadow will rise up by 50%.
A thin smile spread on Jin's lips. Good. This was the new specific skill he learned when he broke past level 70 back in the demon's castle. He sensed the fighting spirit of his enhanced soldiers soaring higher. Quite obviously, a satisfied grin formed on his face. 50 summoned shadow soldiers stood around Jin in a circle as if to protect him. The High Orc warriors, famed for their bravery, began retreating one step at a time after getting their wits scared off by the dangerous pressure emitted by Jin and his soldiers. Orcs? Are retreating? Just what is the meaning of this? Even though they were trembling like a leaf from this unbelievable situation, the hunters also began clutching on to a slender thread of renewed hope now.
Did you feel that?
Yeah.
Can that even make any sense?
The mage-type hunters were sensitive towards the magic energy, to begin with, and they couldn't control their furiously quickening heartbeat no matter what, because an insane amount of magic energy was gushing out from the man who subbed in for their luggage carrier, someone whom they thought of as a simple E-rank, no less. No, hang on, is this even magic energy? To think, this magic energy is even more ominous than what the High Orc shaman is emitting. The sheer pressure from the magic energy thickly filling up the boss room made it difficult to even breathe properly. The fact that this incredible power didn't belong to an enemy relieved them to no end. On the other hand, indescribably heavy and taut tension was flowing among the ranks of High Orcs. With the appearance of the Shadow Soldiers, the difference of 1 to 150 suddenly got reduced to 50 to 150. More importantly, though, those 50 were no ordinary 50 at all. No, that was the power that already transcended common sense, the one that couldn't be quantified with mere numbers. As if to prove that reality, Jin was the very first one to dash forward. The shaman hurriedly shouted out then, "What are you doing? Kill that human right now!" With their backs pushed forward by the voice carrying a thick amount of the shaman's magical energy, the High Orc warriors all roared out and raised their weapons. Step, 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 slice! The skill, Sovereign's Territory, was designed solely for his shadow soldiers. However, even without a status-boosting buff, Jin's displayed strength was already out of this world. High Orc screamed out. Limbs, bits of body parts sliced off by Jin's 2 daggers, and the ensuing trails of blood scattered in all directions. He was so fast that even the elite hunters could only catch the glimpses of his afterimage. Right. That's like seeing our vice chairman. Cha Hayen's nickname was the Dancer. Normally, she remained a calm, composed figure, but when she jumped into a battle, she swiftly cut down monsters as if she was performing a fast-tempo dance routine. Hence, that nickname was given to her. The woman in question forbade the use of that nickname because of how embarrassing it sounded, so it wasn't widely known. But some people still resorted to calling her that every now and then. And now their supposed porter was displaying a movement that equaled Cha Hayen. No, even exceeding her speed. If Cha Hayen danced, then Mr. Porter was a typhoon. He had become the center of the storm to obliterate the surrounding monsters. The Shadow Soldiers didn't lose out either. The former leader of the Ice Bears, Tank, took a step forward, and that signaled the attack of the Shadow Soldiers. Iron took to the front, just as he had done previously. Sorry, my inflection was wrong. Just as he had done previously, Iron yelled out at the top of his lungs before he could enter the fray properly.
Iron has used skill, Shout of Provocation. The target's resistance is too high and the intended effect didn't activate.
When his skill failed to work, Iron got angry and began roaring out like a beast. And then he began destroying the hapless high orcs with his massive hammer.
Swoosh! Crack!
He was so destructive that one even felt a smidgen of pity for the high orcs. On the other hand, Igris was elegantly and efficiently cutting down the necks of his enemies in complete contrast to Iron's brutality. High orcs running into Igris didn't even stand a chance to scream before their breaths were cut short. When Igris' sword drew an arc in the air, another high orc lost its head. Regular Shadow soldiers found it hard to fight against individual high orcs, but they possessed stamina that didn't know the meaning of fatigue, and the capability to regenerate almost endlessly. And buying time in this fashion, the sea of fire shooting from the magic soldiers would rain down on top of the enemies with no exceptions.
Kaboom! Rumble!
The number of high orcs decreased substantially in no time at all. The shaman's swine-like cheek meats quivered in rage.
How an insolent human dared be... how an insolent human being dares to...
The boss's glare was now firmly fixed on Jin. The boss quickly decided to kill that human first. The black armored soldiers were summons called forth by that human. If that human died, then these soldiers would disappear too. In order to kill Jin, the shaman began chanting a spell. The lips of the shaman quickly moved up and down. The song of slowness, the song of blindness, the song of crippling fever, the song of intolerable pain, and the song of demonic slumber. 5 different types of hexes were completed in an instant and flew towards their intended victim.
It's done!
The corners of the shaman's lips arched up. The moment all of those hexes were completed, Jin also sensed the unnatural movement of magic energy.
Magic, is it?
Jin's eyes met those of the shaman's. The orc shaman smirked derisively.
It's already too late, human.
Hexes were different from normal magic spells and couldn't be evaded. The moment it was cast, that would be the end. With that human filth turning into a walking corpse wrecked by all sorts of afflictions, his fate was sealed. To be ripped to shreds by the high orc warriors and their weapons. That was the end truly befitting a measly human who didn't know his place and dared to show off. Unfortunately for the monster, however, a familiar mechanical beep rang in Jin's ears.
Bing! Abnormal status has occurred. All abnormal status will be removed with the effects of buff, immunity.
Mechanical beeps fired out one after the other.
Hex, slow has been dispelled. Hex, blindness has been dispelled.
All 5 hexes were dispelled even before they had the chance to activate. Jin smirked at the results. There was this buff he received when he changed into the player. The blessings from the Grand Sorcerer Kandiaru. Thanks to that, he didn't have to worry about status-altering magic such as hexes.
What?
The shaman shuddered in shock. Fitting for a boss of the rank A dungeon, the High Orc shaman had immediately realized that its curses were rendered ineffective by an even greater power than it.
But those were hexes I cast!
This made no sense. In order to dispel hexes, one required the purification magic, or the blessings of a being possessing greater power than that of the hex itself.
There was an even more excellent shaman than this great me among humans?
Even before the monster could think about it some more, the shaman cried out from the pain shooting up from the back of its foot.
Roar!
When it looked down, it found a dagger deeply lodged in its foot. It was Jin's Night Killer. The shaman raised its head and its bloodshot glare landed on Jin.
How dare a mere human!
Jin casually cut apart a high orc trying to pounce on him and silently mouthed some words to the orc shaman. Don't do anything useless, in other words. Immediately, the shaman's face reddened up like a beautifully ripe persimmon. How dare a measly human! So, it still has some mental capacity left to get angry, huh? Jin's expression turned icy in the blink of an eye. In all honesty, he could have eliminated the shaman right at the beginning of the battle if he wanted to. However, he chose not to, because he wanted to instill the sense of fear into the heart of that shaman, the way it managed to do to the hunters present. However, it seemed not quite enough to make that arrogant monster taste the true meaning of fear. The bastard's eyes were still alive. In that case, let me show you an interesting spectacle, then. From then on, he'd show the true sphere of influence of a necromancer. From now on, in the eyes of this shadow sovereign, his surroundings now resembled a location of celebration, filled with all sorts of delicacies. From the corpses of the high orcs sprawled on the ground, black smoke eerily rose up as if they were waiting for Jin's call. So Jin called out to them. Arise.
Shadow extraction has commenced.
Accompanying the system's message alerting him to the activation of his skill, horrifying screams that resembled death throes resounded out from somewhere unknown. The shaman's eyes widened in shock. What is... The shaman didn't get to finish its sentence. Even before it could, black hands began rising up from the shadows beneath the corpses of the high orcs. That was why.
Shadow extraction is a success.
Jin began smiling deeply while gazing contently at the newbies joining his shadow army. My warriors have become undead! The shaman began shuddering uncontrollably. About 50 warriors had lost their lives so far, and about the same number had changed into those black armored soldiers. Which means those soldiers that Filter summoned are... The shaman finally realized that the unidentifiable human was not wielding regular summons at all, and at the same time it also realized how disadvantageous they were against the enemy's powers. The fight between 50 and 150 had morphed to 100 versus 100. High Orc warriors would bravely jump into a fight against enemies stronger than themselves without fear, but they rapidly lost all their fighting spirit the moment they saw their former comrades being revived as shadow soldiers. High Orcs, renowned for never backing down from a chance to shed some blood, were now openly retreating out of fear. The fact that they wouldn't be able to ascend to the warrior's heaven after their death and instead become the puppets of the enemy was the worst possible nightmare for these high orcs. For sure, the impact of him showing off the shadow extraction skill was quite huge. It worked against the warriors. So what about the shaman then? Jin scanned the complexion of the shaman next. Oh. Jin's expression brightened. Finally, there were signs of fear in that bastard's eyes. While shaking like a leaf, the shaman recalled the existence that could revive the dead into shadows. There could not possibly be two people possessing the exact same power. So, that human had to be him. If that person is him, then why are we here? However, the moment the shaman thought about itself and we, the inside of its brain blanked out and the relevant memories contained within were wiped out in an instant. The only emotion remaining there was fear. Not knowing what happened, Jin formed a satisfied expression. That's right. Stay exactly like that. His plan of making the shaman shudder in fear until the end was a resounding success. He turned his head while smiling like that and then spotted a certain familiar female standing by the entrance of the boss room. Jin tilted his head. Who was that? She seemed a bit too distant to be totally familiar to him, however. That was why he needed a bit of a moment to recall what her name was. And she was none other than the Rank S hunter currently affiliated with the Hunters Guild, Cha Hae-in. But what is that woman doing here? Jin might have been somewhat surprised by her presence here, but then Cha's own shock was greater than his. Her wide-open eyes stared at Jin and his shadow soldiers. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to call it for the end of chapters 81 to 90 for my reading of Solo Leveling. Thank you all for stopping by. I appreciate your support as I cover the light novel of this incredible series, because even though I've read through the entire webcomic and, seen the anime, something about reading the light novel just adds an even greater sense of detail to what I have originally read on my channel many years ago. So I just want to say thank you for all the support. Thank you to members in chat Ravi and Mihai, and to anyone else who has watched me today, or if you're watching while later on after this stream has ended, I just want to say thank you, and especially if you made it to the end, thank you for everything. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for everything you've ever done for me, and I will see you guys in my next session. With that being said, hope you all enjoyed. Can't wait to see you all in my next video. Like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, because I am always looking forward to entertaining you. And because I know you're coming back anyway. Have a fantastic day, and once again, as always, later, peoples!